Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 word and to some Austrian Grand Prix race reaction. That was all right. I enjoyed that quite a bit, actually. In fact, the whole weekend, very exciting. Very, very good. Austria often delivers, doesn't it? So I shouldn't be totally surprised, but really, really enjoyed that race. Let me know in chat what you give that out of 10. If I would say for me, if 6 is average and 10 is great, I would say that was around an 8. I can understand people maybe wanting to mark it down a little bit because of all the track limits, chaos and all of that. We will get into that, I promise. But I think an 8. I really, really enjoyed that. Lots of action. And all right, fine, Max Verstappen, let's face it, was taking the mickey a little bit at the end just to show everyone just how dominant that car is. He still had to fight for it. He still had to overtake the Ferraris. It wasn't exactly difficult to get past them, but I still think it was good to see overtakes for the lead, even if they were inevitable. So good stuff throughout the field as well. Lots of action to sink our teeth into. Really looking forward to it. I've got Will with me as well. We'll get to Will in just a second. But thank you very much to Card or Cardi. I always get you mixed up with your name, but I'll alternate today. We'll go with Cardi today. We'll do Card next week. Thank you so much for your super chat. So first off, Rip Delano Van der Hoff, of course. Yep, shame to see another talent go. Tragic. I mean, I'll start the stream off just on that straight away. All I can say, thoughts and condolences to his family. 18 years old. That is just... It's nothing, is it? It's devastating. So thoughts with them, of course. We'll probably touch on that a little bit later as well, but thank you for just starting the stream off with that, Cardi. Says, as for the race, a solid 7 out of 10, but they need to add some gravel to take away that urge, causing all the track limits. Max and Red Bull were just showing off. Thank you very much, Card, for your super chat. I appreciate that one. I alternated again. There you go. But yes, let's hop into this because quite a bit to go through, and there's some controversy I'm sure we'll need to cover as well. But good evening, Will. Good afternoon, whatever you want to call it. How are you, mate? Did you enjoy that one? I've given it an 8 out of 10, and am I being a little bit overexcitable there, as usual?
Afternoon, Sean. Afternoon, everybody. You know what? I'm with you. I think we finally got a good race to talk about. I kind of feel like I was becoming a bit of a curse on this series because every time you got me on, just nothing happened. And admittedly, at the front, there wasn't much to talk about. Well, I mean, at the very front. But behind that, it was great. And as you were saying earlier, Austria always throws up a good race. We've got loads of overtaking opportunities, and it's one of my favourite tracks on the calendar. So, yeah, it delivered again. And yeah, I'm with you. 7.58 out of 10 is where I would go. And it looks like the chat's agreeing with us there.
Yeah, it's rare. It's rare that they agree with us, so that's nice.
I was about to say, yeah, it makes a nice change, doesn't it?
Well, I just very quickly on the sprint as well, because it's a race reaction. So I don't want to get into the sprint too much. We can talk about it more later. But I will just say right off the bat, a lot of people I've seen talking, people I've spoken to, very much giving it the old, oh, the sprints are brilliant now. I just want to be clear, and I believe, I might be wrong, but I think it was either Tommy or Matt made the point on Twitter. This hasn't proven that the sprints are brilliant. Yesterday didn't prove that. It proved what we already knew. Mixed conditions, mixed tyre strategies make for great racing and great entertainment. So really enjoyed the sprint. I'm not trying to dump on it, but it's not something, when we have the next sprint in Belgium, don't expect something like we had in Austria because it'll all be down to conditions. So, but I enjoyed the sprint as well. I know a lot of people don't. I'm not going to name names. I'll probably pop up in chat at some point to tell me I'm not watching because it's rubbish. But I enjoyed yesterday, and we got a great race today. And qualifying was good too. Both qualifying sessions were dramatic at times. But let's start, Will, with Red Bull. I know that's a shock to start with the winners being Red Bull. I know it doesn't happen very often. That is only 9 wins in a row so far this season. 10 in a row if we include Abu Dhabi last year. Max Verstappen, 81 points clear of Perez. That's been done for a while. Red Bull, 199 points clear of Mercedes. I think it was either Chris Medland or Philip Horton made the point that if Max Verstappen carries on at this rate, sort of 7, 8, 9 points, I think he said, something around there, per race over Checo, who'll have this season wrapped up by Qatar. I mean, utter domination yesterday, domination today. As I said at the start, yes, he had to pass both the Ferraris, but that was quite inevitable. He was so pacey. Even not pitting under the VSC didn't seem to affect him, and he's even taking a piss at the end by going for fastest lap. I mean, that's the kind of season we're at, isn't it? It's just, unless something goes catastrophically wrong for Red Bull or Max makes a big mistake, which we don't see a lot of, but if he does, then this is really what we've got this year, which, we're witnessing history. We should enjoy that to a point.
Yeah, I mean, they'll get an engine failure at some point, right? Surely.
You've got a Honda, it must.
Yeah, exactly.
It used to blow up all the time.
It does feel a bit like when I was 12 or 13, playing the F1 game on the easiest difficulty and winning the championship by like Belgium and Italy because I was winning the race and lapping the field and thinking, oh, I'm so good at this. There's nothing to do with the fact that I'm playing on 0% AI at all. That's honestly how it feels. And it as you say, it's amazing from a history point of view. We are witnessing history here, as you said. From a neutral fan's point of view, can I call myself a neutral? I don't know. Ricardo's not here anymore. I'm going to call myself a neutral. It's obviously a little less exciting, but we had, as you said, a great battle behind Red Bull today, and fair play to them. We say this every week, but they got the regulations right despite having less wind tunnel time on it. So yeah, fair play to them, fair play to Adrian Newey, fair play to the whole team. You can't fault them for it.
Thank you very much to Valentine, by the way, for your super chat. Sorry I missed that. Thank you so much. That's very generous of you. Really appreciate your support, mate. So thank you for that. But just on Verstappen's race rather than the season as a whole, fought hard to keep Leclerc behind on lap 1. Some nice little battling there. Pitted end of lap 24 for the hards and then dropped to P3 behind both Ferraris. I think that ended a run, I think Crofty said, of 249 laps in the lead. The number might be wrong, but it ended his run of laps in the lead. It didn't last very long, did it? Passed Sainz outside of turn 3, cut back, and then passed on the run to turn 4. That was a really nice move. But again, that straight line pace with that DRS is just ridiculous. So that was kind of inevitable. Overtook Leclerc for the lead on lap 35, and that was basically it, wasn't it? Some clever play. Yeah, DRS play between Verstappen and Leclerc, always fun, but, holding back at turn 3 didn't go in like he did, if you like, on Saturday, all sliding and all over the place, deep on the brakes, whatever you want to call it. He went in quite steady because he slowed off to stay behind the DRS line and still got the overtake done on Leclerc, and then had DRS on the straight to turn 4, and that was pretty much it. Pitted at the end of lap 69 to go for fastest lap, softs on, and then did a 1:17.012 on the final lap, which I think was about 1.1 seconds quicker than the fastest lap we'd had up to that point, which was Perez, who I think it did an 18.1. So I know the soft tyre is going to be quicker anyway, but that brings me back to the point I made after Canada when people were saying, oh, it looks closer. I'm not convinced that when he's out front, he's got, he's giving it everything. I think they're leaving something on the table, and that's backed up by the fact he didn't get black and white flags for track limits and things like that. I still think if Ferrari had been closer today, or Mercedes or Aston Martin, whoever, I think if they need to push more, Red Bull have got more in that car, and Verstappen's got more to give, which is, I'm sure for neutrals out there, absolutely terrifying, but I'm sure for Verstappen fans, very, very exciting that he's still got more to give. Honestly, it reminds me of watching Schumacher domination. As a Schumacher fan, it was amazing. But there were times when he'd be out front cruising and you thought, if he needs to push more, there's more time in that car yet to come. And that was great for me, but my parents were so depressed about that because they were fans of drivers like David Coulthard for some reason.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. And as I said, you got to congratulate them for it, because it is incredible what they are able to do in what really is a very ultra competitive Formula One. I mean, I think there was a stat that went around. This was the first time, I'm amazed it's the first time, but this is the first time where in a session, all the field have been separated by less than a second. Even Nick de Vries was less than a second behind Max Verstappen at the end. I think it was Verstappen at the end of Q1, which is phenomenal, really. And the fact that they're still able to, in this modern era of Formula One, be so dominant and so far ahead is just incredible, really.
Yeah, I mean, I feel a bit bad at the moment that we don't talk more about Verstappen and Red Bull, but other than just repeating what we say every race about domination, championships done realistically, if not mathematically, phenomenal season, we're witnessing history, there's not really much to say. Other than today, he had to pass cars for the lead and did it well. I mean, like I say, the thinking on the job, if you like, quick thinking with the DRS at turn 3 with Leclerc, and that nice switch back on Sainz, they're moves that are important. And I think commentary were talking about, why didn't they pit on the virtual safety car, and could this put Verstappen in I don't know if they're trying to big it up, I don't know, but put him under pressure because he's going to have to pit and the Ferraris have to pit. And I thought as soon as he gets in the lead, he'll pull enough for at least a safety car cushion, and then he'll just pit after the Ferraris, and that's exactly what he did. I mean, no great surprise there. Sergio Perez in the other Red Bull, disappointing on Friday with qualifying to be down in 15th place. Track limits You're going to hear that a lot today. Getting lap times deleted. So good recovery, really good recovery today to go from 15th to 2nd, especially given that I think he said after the race that he was still feeling a little bit rubbish after being ill earlier in the week. So he's fought hard through. Good strategy from Red Bull. He's executed everything he needed to. Some good overtakes as well. And a great fight with Carlos Sainz over a couple of laps between. I think it was like 58 and 61 in that battle for P3 where he was intimidating. Whatever. Carlos, I don't know what that was about. Carlos Sainz. So really good recovery from Checo. And, you know, it's P3. Max is out front. But to come from 15th to 3rd, yes, it is in that car, is still a very good job. And, you know, I'm not going to sit here going, oh, it's going to hurt him in the World Championship. That's done. Let's not even entertain that. If you want to, you can do, but I'm just not going to do that. So 3rd place today, I'd say an important 3rd place, Will, because that now just ends that run that he's been on just lately. Going to Silverstone, we're in a good, you know, run of races at the moment, 4 in 5 weeks. If he can get out of Q or get into Q3 next week, get himself up towards the front, he should have good results. This might just give him a little bit of a boost and just remind people that he can still drive that car, because I've seen a lot of people talking about dropping him even mid-season, which is hilarious. I mean, I think he'll be in that car next season absolutely 100%. I don't think Red Bull will drop him at the end of the season, let alone mid-season, but a good result is what I'm saying. That's the long way of saying he did all right, didn't he, Will?
Yeah, you just said
I like to go the long way around.
You just said 4 races in 5 weeks, and I've just remembered how much work I now have to do. I'll be honest, the qualifying trend is more worrying, because you can realistically, we've seen it this year already several times, when the Red Bulls start out of position, they can still make their way easily up the grid to at least a top 5 finish. And at the end of the day, that's what Red Bull need for the constructors. Not that really they are under threat at all at the moment. This weekend may be made slightly harder because I think Ferrari was the closest they've been all year so far. I'm sure we'll get to them later. But I don't think Perez is going, but I think the pressure is definitely starting to be put on him somewhat. He'll make it to the end of the season. I think there's still a very good chance he'll stay at the team in 2024. But if I'm honest, it wouldn't surprise me if someone else was in that seat come next year. I think the chances are still slim. I think it's more likely that Checo remains in that car and Red Bull continue to have faith, because he has shown what he can do. And, you know, I think he's going through a bit of a rough patch at the moment. If he can get out of that, fine. But realistically, if we were in, I'd say even last season, Red Bull would be struggling to pick up the Constructors' Championship right now, had Ferrari been a little bit closer over the whole year like they were in 2022. So, for me, I don't know. I just think that Checo has definitely been given a warning now. His racing antics with Verstappen as well, I think, are going to definitely cause a few, tensions potentially to arise at Red Bull. I don't think realistically there's a high chance of him losing his seat, but I think there is a chance, if that makes sense.
I feel a bit bad having that conversation after he's gone from 15th to 3rd, but he did qualify badly on Friday, so it's worth pointing. But just very quickly, we could do it later in Q&A, because I'm sure it'll come up. I sort of disagree on the antics thing, because yesterday he says he didn't see Verstappen, fine, let's believe him, but he does squeeze him onto the grass. Verstappen has a significant portion of his car alongside, squeezes him there, and then Verstappen's all over the place in turn 3, and they end up both going a little bit wide, and it's 6 of one, half a dozen of the other at worst. But the fact that after the race, after the sprint, they both kind of got together, talked about it, sorted it out, understood each other's perspective, and that was it. The reason I would agree that there's a slim chance is because you can never trust Red Bull with these things. You never know what's going through Helmut Marko's head. I did a video on Friday about it. You never know what's going through Helmut Marko's head with drivers. But I would argue, if you want a second driver to Max Verstappen, there is not anybody out there who, in my opinion, could do a better job. What I mean by that is you could say, well, Norris is better than Perez or Alonso's better than Perez. Absolutely, fine, you can have that argument. But do you want to put Alonso alongside Verstappen when he's your number one driver and you want him to be winning the championships for you? You want a Perez, you want a Bottas-style character or a Bottas-style But do you know what I mean? A Bottas sort of driver. You want somebody in there who can push Max if he needs to, or can pick up wins if Max has a bad weekend, or can help you to that constructors title. But you don't want Alonso in there if your number one driver is supposed to be Verstappen. A bit like you wouldn't put Mika Hakkinen and Michael Schumacher together at Ferrari when Hakkinen decides to take a sabbatical. They didn't go to sign him, or you wouldn't have put I almost feel like why Michael Schumacher was almost sort of given a little push out the door in 2006 because they didn't want to put Raikkonen alongside him. They wanted 1 and 2, and that's kind of how I see Red Bull. So I think Perez is the right man for the job. But obviously, if he goes to another 4 races, not getting into Q3, and then ends up 8th, 7th, 9th, or whatever, then maybe there's a different conversation. But I think he's all right, it's Checo. But again, I don't like saying that when he's just had a really good Sunday, and actually, I think a really good Saturday with the battle with Verstappen. So. Good stuff from him. And that fight, again, just very quickly, fantastic. Really enjoyed that between him and Carlos Sainz. I think that was a lot of fun. So that's just... I'm just reading chat. I'd read something. I was reading somebody else's conversation. I thought somebody was calling me something, but it's all right. It doesn't matter. Sorry. Sorry for the pause. But yeah, that's really all I've got to say. Unless you've got something to add, Will, on Checo's race. I'm just looking for my notes here. Second stop lap after Verstappen, the fight with Sainz, some good stuff, some good overtaking done. I know in a very fast car, but
yeah, I guess the only thing I would add is this is Red Bull. I don't think this is over. I mean, my reason for that is go back to Monaco last year. We all thought that was well and truly behind us. We get to Brazil, and then all of a sudden, it's all kicking off again and everything's been thrown back up into the open. So I don't know whether this is fully behind Verstappen and Perez, even if they've had that chat. Maybe they've learned from it, and maybe this is almost a response from that incident in Brazil last year, where they're now able to have a chat and maybe more maturely get over what was going on. So, maybe I'm wrong on that, but I wouldn't be shocked if this gets mentioned again later on down the line if these two end up on track together. Then again, Perez has got to qualify better before we get there. But no, he did do well on Sunday. I will give him that. I think he did come through the field really, really well. He had a clean race as well. So, fair play to him on that.
Connor says, a good Saturday question mark. He finished 20 seconds behind in a 24-lap race. Yes, 20 seconds behind Max Verstappen. That's, it's no different to, I feel like I'm really shitting on Checo, and I'm not trying to because I love the guy. I've defended him so much on this channel, too much, I'd argue. But that's like saying, Barrichello finished 20 seconds behind Michael Schumacher. Well, yeah, of course he did. Or Bottas 20 seconds behind Hamilton. That's fine, as long as he's there. My point was, the battle with Verstappen, he was elbows out. He wasn't afraid to give it, basically, rather than just take it. Bless him. I just need to make it clear with Perez. I'm a big Perez fan, so I'm not dumping on him. Charles Leclerc, second place. A Ferrari on the podium. What's going on? I don't often pick Ferrari for podiums. Somebody picked me up on it in my preview on Thursday, sort of saying why no faith in Ferrari. And the reality is that I have no faith in Ferrari. That's the truth. That I do not trust them, even in a good qualifying session, that they're not going to, quite frankly, shit the bed on strategy on a Sunday. So I struggle to sort of put them in the podium places, but I was very wrong this weekend. Second place for Leclerc. Really nice drive. Not a huge amount to say other than that nice little fight with Verstappen on the first lap. Slow virtual safety car stop, which could have cost him, but in the end it didn't. Led for a while as well until Verstappen got through, but pretty much stayed second place. Where was he? 12 seconds up the road from Perez, and Sainz was 4.1 further back, so he was pretty comfortable in second place. Must be said, though, helped to a point by his teammate Carlos Sainz, who did so well to fend off Sergio Perez late on, because I think I'm looking at Perez's pace, 1:09.3, 6/10 quicker than Leclerc on that final lap, so he may have had a run at him. I think Fred Vasseur said they felt quite safe from Perez, but Sainz certainly helped. Sort of almost Alonso Ocon-esque in some ways, but not for the win, obviously, but really good stuff from Sainz to help fend him off. But I just think Leclerc overall, I wouldn't say a quiet day, but aside from that scrap with Verstappen on the first lap and a slow pit stop and leading for a while, I don't think there's an awful lot more to say on his day. One of those days where strategy was good. I know. He was good. And you're going up against that car with Verstappen at the wheel. You're going to struggle to fend him off. So I think he did a decent job today, Leclerc. And in some ways kept his up to himself and picked up a really good result, a big 18 points as well.
Yeah, with Leclerc, I'll agree on Leclerc. Strategy, I'm less confident about.
Really?
Well, a couple of
Leclerc's
cases.
strategy.
Leclerc's strategy was fine. It was
Yeah.
Sainz's strategy. In my opinion, you should have let Sainz through early on in the race. He had the pace. Whether that was off the challenge for Verstappen, who knows? But I think leaving him behind there to damage his tyres, and then the VSC, I'm not sure what happened there. I appreciate they couldn't have gone in initially, because it was too late.
Yeah.
But then the second time, how he ended up behind Norris, I'm not sure, and obviously Sainz wasn't happy with that. And then there was later on where Sainz was asking to extend, and then they boxed him immediately, and he ends up losing out initially to Norris. He fought back, but there are still a few wobbles in Ferrari's strategy today. Leclerc, though, I think did really, really well, and Sainz as well. Sainz really impressed me, and this, I think, was one of his strongest races of the year. From a driver's standpoint, like, no complaints at all. I think the team had the pace today. Maybe not for the win, but they were definitely a clear second best, where I don't think that's necessarily been quite so obvious previously this year anyway. So there's definitely positives to take out of it. We'll see heading into Silverstone. They're usually quite good around there. So we'll see how we go. I also just want to add on a completely separate note. It's just come out from the race. Aston Martin have lodged an official protest against the results of the Austrian Grand Prix for an as yet undisclosed reason. It will have a team representative report to the stewards in half an hour. So there you go. That will be interesting. I'm sure we'll get to Aston later, but no idea what that's about.
Yeah, I just opened the document as you just before you said that, actually. Well, it just came through on the FIA feed, so nothing in there about what it is. So we'll keep an eye on that. Unlikely we'll get a decision while we're live. So keep an eye on whoever you keep an eye on Twitter. No, keep an eye on me on Twitter because I'm not on there anymore other than for DMs. So that's assuming you can read tweets.
Yeah, you got out at the right time, mate. You got out at the right time.
But yeah, just on the strategy thing, I was more about Leclerc's strategy rather than Ferrari as a whole. Although, having said that, there was a point, and you reminded with your science comment about extending. They did say to Leclerc I think they said something like there was threats at the end. So we'll extend. He said copy, and then a lap later they went box. I was like, okay. Is that a threat gone, or are you just having a moment? But yeah, no, I agree on a site strategy. I think he wanted to stay out. I think he said after his virtual safety car stopped that he wanted to stay out. I'm not convinced he'd have challenged Verstappen Sainz, even though his pace did appear in the early stages at least, or certainly was in the early stages a bit better than Leclerc's. But it seemed like Ferrari were playing with a team game today. Don't attack. He wanted to go through. Almost like a let's try and bring home a 2-3 if we can, because they knew that they were unlikely to challenge Verstappen, which I sort of understand, but also I want to see racing. So if Sainz has got a better chance of challenging Verstappen, as unlikely as that may be, it's a shame they couldn't have let him go and then maybe swap them back if it wasn't working. But what won't have helped Sainz today was a 5-second penalty for track limits, of course. Just look at chat for some opinion on the... so no, that's not it. So somebody in chat was giving some opinion on whether or not Sainz could have challenged. I think I saw. There we go. Nick says Sainz was only held Perez for 3 laps. Leclerc was safe anyway, and somebody else said that actually not pitting Perez under the virtual safety car helped Leclerc more, which I suppose kind of makes a bit of sense. Yeah. We'll go back to Perez later. We'll do a bit of Q&A if you want to ask about that one, but I'll have a think about that one. But yeah, I think decent from Sainz today. Good pace, 5-second type. Do you want to do track limits now, chat, or do you want me to leave it till later and we'll get through the order first? Because we're at our first track limits penalty, so I'm not sure whether we want to go with that now. But I think overall Ferrari, really good weekend. Actually, I'm really surprised. Well, I didn't think they'd be anywhere this weekend near this, and they've almost they go well here anyway. Generally, don't they have last couple of years or so. So maybe there's a track specific thing here, but the update as well will have helped. So. I want to get excited is what I was saying, but I fear that maybe a bit like Mercedes in Spain, is this a track specific thing? It's difficult, isn't it? People saying do it later, so we'll do it later then. We'll do track limits later. I think Sainz, Ferrari, Leclerc, good step forward this weekend. Are you hopeful this is And it's not about, I'm not trying to dump on Red Bull and say, oh, somebody's got to take the fight, because I think that's just not going to happen. But in that scrap between Aston, Mercedes, have Ferrari joined that, or are you concerned this is a track thing rather than an update that's really given them a step forward?
I think it's so close, it will always be a track thing, given how close the three of those teams are. I think Austria, it suited them. Go back earlier in the year, and it might have suited Aston, it might have suited Mercedes, and that actually makes the battle for second really, really interesting. And how teams have adapted their cars for the remaining races on the calendar. So, I think obviously Aston today were clearly, third, fourth. Third or fourth, to the way you place them with Mercedes, also a bit of a stinker out there. But Ferrari had it this time round. I think, depending on what the Mercedes upgrades look like next weekend at Silverstone, I think they will also be up there. Again, it's a track that they have historically done fairly well at. I think
Sainz won last year,
Sainz won last year, exactly. So we'll see. We'll have a look. But it's so tight out there at the moment, which is great. And if we look at the battle for second, it's fascinating. It adds a little bit of excitement. And obviously, a season that's being completely dominated by Verstappen and Red Bull.
This is nice to say. Third best team today, McLaren.
Actually, yeah, good point.
On the list of things that I wasn't expecting to say today, that's another one. McLaren, Lando Norris P5, Piastri down in 17th, but Lando Norris P5. Really good pace in that car. Enjoyed the fight with Lewis Hamilton. That's always good fun when those two get together on track. A bit like Leclerc and Alonso used to be when Leclerc was in his Alfa Romeo Sauber days and Alonso was wherever he was at the time, McLaren, I would assume. But yeah, no, that was always good fun. So I feel like whenever Lando and Lewis get together on track, it's always going to be entertaining. So that was good stuff from him. I don't have a lot in the notes other than just how impressed I was with how good that McLaren was at a track where, Lando does generally go well anyway, but the update seems to have been a good step forward. It's nice to see they're getting on top of things, and he raced really well today. Some good fighting, did a good job to keep cars behind, and did a good job to get past cars that you wouldn't normally expect him to overtake. So certainly not the way it's gone this season. So great stuff from McLaren. Less so for Piastri, down in 17th place. Like I say, tapped the back of Magnussen at turn 3, and that caused some front wing damage, which put him out of sync with everybody, and he was down in 17th place come the end of the race, a long way away from points, really. So shame for him, but I mean, incredible stuff from Lando and McLaren this weekend overall, given what we're expecting of them. So great. I'm just really happy, Will, to be talking about McLaren taking a step forward rather than just getting towards the end of the stream and just dumping on them because they've had a bad weekend. It's great to see.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think it's also important to note with Piastri, he didn't have the update package, did he? I think he gets that. He gets that next weekend. So he had obviously not the best race from him, but Lando smashed it, and he just seemed. I know Lando likes to play a lot of things down generally, but he just seemed to have that little extra bit of confidence coming into this weekend, and it showed because they had a bit of a wobble, I think, in first practice as well, because Lando was last, if I remember correctly. Just they seem to be struggling, and it's a bit of a risk bringing an update package here anyway, because you have that 1 hour to get it all set up and make sure you know the ins and outs of it, as opposed to the 3 hours that you usually get. So it was definitely a risk sort of coming in there with this upgrade, but it's definitely worked, and you can see why they've kind of rushed it through and got it out at least on one car here, because it's a track where McLaren have historically done quite well. So yeah, no, good to see, and obviously quite a positive sign leading into their home race.
It is P5 at the moment for Norris, but there's been another document from the Austrian Grand Prix FIA, or the FIA stewards at the Austrian Grand Prix. They say a protest has been lodged by Aston Martin against the provisional classification. The protest claims that a number of cars were not penalised for a breach of Article 33.3, which I believe is track limits, of the sporting regulations. The stewards, having become aware of the existence of a number of deleted times due to exceeding track limits that were drawn to our attention after the receipt of the protest, have requested race control to perform a reconciliation of all deleted laps with penalties applied. We note that race control dealt with in excess 100 deleted laps during the race. So what that basically means, unless I'm reading it wrong, Will, In the meantime, the stewards, having become aware of existence of a number of deleted lap times due to track limits that were drawn to our attention after the receipt of the protest, have requested race control to perform a reconciliation of all deleted laps with penalties applied. So they're going to go through every single deleted lap and make sure that every single penalty has been correctly applied. Is that correct? Am I reading that right?
I think you are, but how have they suddenly become aware as if these things were magically not available to them beforehand?
Because they got to 100 laps and their heads exploded. Like, what is this? So my point is, well, Lando potentially, if they decide he is one of those drivers, could end up P6, which still isn't a terrible result, and it still doesn't take away from the fact that it's a great step forward for McLaren, but there is the potential there. And again, I'm saying potential, possibly rumoured, whatever, that he could be in a spot of bother here. But, I mean...
This is when we slap Verstappen with a 5-second penalty.
I was going to say, how important is it he's 5.1 clear? He's 5.1 clear. He'd still win.
I mean, you say that. Look at Tsunoda, Tsunoda got what 15 seconds worth of penalties. I bet you Red Bull are shitting themselves at the moment because, yeah, that's, oh my God. I'd love to see the list of laps deleted. I'm just amazed because I'm sure we might as well get to track limits now, I think, now that's come out. But I'm amazed at how inconsistent it was because you had initially, I think it was Norris on Hamilton, wasn't it? And we heard absolutely nothing for ages. Then all of a sudden, right, let's slap all these penalties on at once, which feels somewhat unfair because there was very little time to make aware. I guess actually with Hamilton, he was given a bit of a warning, wasn't he? Then he went over it again. So, but for some of the other drivers out there that all of a sudden were given like warning, penalty, off you go in all about 5 seconds as the FIA were trying to play catch up. It feels a little bit harsh, but yeah, and then with Perez, that was the other one where Hamilton kept complaining. Again, we never saw it on the live feed, so it might have just been Hamilton being, Lewis Hamilton. But if he was, being genuine with that, and Perez was every single lap going across the limits at turn 10. Why did he? I don't think he got a black and white flag for it, did he? So it did seem incredibly inconsistent. It's kind of a case of if you're going to manage it, you've got to manage it for everyone and manage it effectively. And I just don't think it was. So it doesn't surprise me that Aston have called a right to review or whatever they've done. For that, I'm more amazed it's not Otmar Safnauer that's got in there first. That's usually his job. But yeah, very, very interesting indeed.
But Ice Cream Studios makes it a good point actually in chat. Aston Martin need to know that Alonso is squeaky clean as well.
I was about to say, can you imagine now if Aston and Stroll gets shafted to the back? I mean, it would be hilarious. I don't think it'll happen. You'd think they would have looked at that beforehand. But otherwise, it might look a little bit awkward. Yeah, if their protest suddenly results in both cars getting shafted out the top 10. But then again, it's the sort of thing you almost expect to happen in Formula One these days. Oh boy.
18:30. So that's local time. So about 7 minutes from now is the hearing. So if it comes out we're still live, then we'll obviously bring that to you, but we shall see what happens. But I will go into track limits properly later, but the point I'll make now for anyone who will disappear in a bit, there were 7 track limit penalties in the race as things stand. Sainz, Hamilton, Magnussen, Gasly, Albon, Sargent and Tsunoda. 13 other drivers didn't get one. So it shows that, I mean, George Russell I don't think got a strike, did he? I think there are only 2 drivers who didn't get a strike in the end, so it can be done, but it just seems like it's a big issue here at the Red Bull Ring, more so than anywhere else. So maybe, I mean, look, you all know what my answer's going to be, and I know that there will be people who watch MotoGP and go, they can't do that because of the motorbikes, but just stick gravel out there. They don't all go wide at turn 6 because there's a firm track limit there. You go over that white line, you're in the gravel. So stick gravel there. Even just a meter the other side of the curb. So you've got like a car's width between the white line and then the meter of gravel. And then if they're in the gravel, they lose time. So there you go. That's the obvious solution in my head. But I know that then you've got to remember that MotoGP race here and other Formula and other series do, and you can't necessarily have gravel there. But I don't know, a stinger that can be removed at the end of a weekend, or some more aggressive curbs that stop drivers wanting to go on them.
Or just make it like Mario Kart,
or
a
a
massive
wall.
pit on the side of the side, just like a giant trench. They won't go anywhere near it. In that
Yes,
case.
banana skins all on the
Yes.
outside. That'll show him. But yeah, so great stuff from McLaren. Whatever happens, really pleased to take a step forward. Good timing as well. Again, it's that 4 races in 5 weeks thing. So if they can hit a nice run of form now and have a good weekend at Silverstone and Hungary and Belgium, they're going to go into the summer break nice and confident. I think the new wind tunnel will be online. If it isn't already by then, I think it might even be. They said June, I think, originally at the start of the year. So if it isn't online now, it will be soon. It's good stuff for them. So I'm really pleased. And it's nice to talk about them early in the reaction for a change. Thank you very much to Nick for your super chats. This is why track limit penalties do not work. Only grass and gravel traps work. Thank you very much, mate. I know safety, you don't want cars rolling and things like that, but I do like a gravel trap on the outside of a corner because it completely eradicates this entire argument, but it can also be dangerous because it can also roll a car. So do we want to have this argument or do we want cars barrel rolling? I don't know, but Pagano
look
had a
at.
nasty
I was about
one.
to say, he's not racing for the rest of the weekend now. You picked a good time for it. But he's not racing this weekend. Conor Daly's replaced him now for the rest of the. Just for the race today, but that case was. Well, in fact, there wasn't actually gravel trap on the very exit that corner. He had a brake failure. There was nothing he could do, and this is gonna sound really flippant and probably get me in trouble, but
Never.
Cars rolling with the halo. Is it as bad as it was? That's not saying that I want to see cars going and doing somersaults every weekend, but. No, I don't know. It's the wrong weekend
to
start.
Nürburgring 99.
Yeah, it's the wrong weekend to start talking about safety features
Yes.
and Formula One. But I don't know. It's a case of what problem do you want to have? You keep moaning about this, but equally, how often do we see barrel rolling cars in gravel traps? Not a whole lot of the time.
How often do we have this argument over track limits though? It's not I totally get your argument, Will, but at the same time it seems like it's worse this weekend and we're not getting it constant. We're not getting 7 or 8 penalties for track limits anywhere else. So maybe it is specific to it's I don't know, but look, fans are never going to be happy. Lando Norris said after the race that fans sat at home don't understand how hard it is to keep the car within the lines at tracks like this. Fair enough. I'm not going to argue with him. He's driving the car, for goodness sake. But, you've got people screaming for track limits to be policed consistently with a hard and fast rule. We know that the white line, all 4 wheels over, that's a penalty. And then when the FIA enforce that, people start bitching and moaning about it. We've had this recently with other regulations that they've suddenly decided to enforce, and people saying, spending all winter saying that we need regulations to be followed to the letter of the law, and then when it doesn't suit their driver, they have a massive kick-off because it's gone against them. And it's sort of, I think for me, and I think Ted Kravitz made the point, and I think that's what the paddock feeling is. It's more the frustration, and you touched on it, Will, that it took so long to make some of the decisions, and there was so much farting about, but in race control's defense, again, a line you're not going to hear a lot of on this channel, but in race control's defense, if you're deleting over 100 lap times in a race, it's going to take time, isn't it, to just double check that they're all correct, because you don't want to start throwing out penalties and black and white flags if actually it turns out the sensors were wrong and the camera wasn't quite right, and you're going to have another look and actually the front right was just touching the white line. So if they're having to double check all those things, it's going to take time. But maybe there needs to be a better system in place if they're going to do it. Maybe that needs to be, it's all right having a few sensors and some cameras, but maybe you need something more hard and fast that isn't going to make the mistake. If a car is over the line, that's it. And with things like GPS, you'd think that's something that they might be able to come up with. But
and also, this is the amount of money that's going in the sport. It could honestly be a dedicated job for someone at race control to be monitoring one particular corner. They go off, there you go, right, that's your penalty, and that is their job. I don't know whether I don't know the inner workings of race control and how it currently works, but yeah, with all the money that they have playing around, if you're investing in sensors that don't properly work, then you should have the resources to fix that problem.
Hey, Siggy in chat says people forget the law is written by the FIA and hence pretty terrible. That's what I was laughing at, sorry. And thank you very much to AC for a member for 29 months. Wow, that's a lot of me. Thank you very much, AC. Says Perez was let off and should have been penalised for track limits. Do we think De Vries will be at AlphaTauri at the end of the season? We'll come back to that later, mate. I want to talk about that a little bit, of course. And Purple Zebra says it's a 3 strikes and please don't do it again. 4 strikes and we'll wave a flag at you. 5 strikes and you get a 5-second penalty system. Make it harsher. Isn't it? It's 3 strikes and black flag and then 4th is penalty. Or is it 5 now? I don't know. I know Tsunoda got 7 in total and 2 penalties as a result. So, and Clansome says what I'm just itching to say all the time on these streams: the rules are the rules. End of. But again, I feel a bit of a tosser saying, well, just don't go over the white lines, given that I drive a Vauxhall Astra and don't do that very well. So I feel a little bit cheeky, but let's carry on with the order. We'll come back to this. I promise we will. There's lots to get through. Well done, McLaren. This weekend is the short version. I'll keep it on the FIA as well. Aston Martin, Alonso 6th. Stroll in 10th place. Really expected more from than this weekend, but maybe not a terrible recovery from Alonso was 7th and then 6th, and Stroll went 6th to 10th, so it's not really a great recovery, is it? But I've not got a lot in the notes really. Stroll was pinched at turn 1, tight on the inside, and lost a couple of places there. That didn't help him at all. Lost track position during pitting as well, because they came in with the virtual safety car, and then the virtual safety car ended, I believe, when they were in the pit lane, so they lost some of that advantage. Stroll dropped down to 15th from there, and ended up actually on a 3-stopper, did Lance Stroll, so he liked the pit lane today. And Fernando Alonso, I've got some notes that I wanted to read later on the Van der Hoff incident, which we will get to. But Alonso P6 today. Have you got anything on Aston Martin, Will?
Not really much besides what I've originally said. Go back to the sprint. We had a great battle between the two of them there, and
that was fun.
All this teamwork fell out of the window a little bit. They almost lost out to Hulkenberg as a result of that, which was quite funny. But yeah, they entertained us in the sprint. They were pretty quiet during the race. Not really their weekend. They weren't really as far up the grid as we have seen in the past. So yeah, just a bit of a quiet one, really, as far as Sunday's concerned.
Yes, I think compared to that result last year, we're buzzing about them, aren't we? But where they are this year, which I guess is credit to them, the step forward they've taken, that's just not a great weekend. But I've got the press release, so that saves me here. Alonso says, I think there was more or less the maximum we could have achieved today. We were very close to Lando Norris in terms of pace and also the Mercedes. We tried something different by starting on hards, but the virtual safety car meant our advantage of going longer in the first stint wasn't possible anymore. Forgot he started on hards, yeah, so that was an interesting one. The circuit didn't suit our car last year, so maybe there is something for us to look into. So obviously looking ahead to next year already in Austria. Overall, we scored a number of points over the sprint weekend, and we've made some good ground in the fight for second in the Constructors' Championship. And Lance Stroll said it was a tough day, still come away the weekend with some decent points. Slightly mistimed our stop under the virtual safety car this afternoon, lost several places in the pits, and that decision dictated the strategy for the rest of our race. In hindsight, we probably should have pitted during the first lap of the virtual safety car rather than the second, so that's something we need to review and learn from. A good few battles on track while fighting back through the field. Taking Yuki Tsunoda at turn 3 was especially fun. Our focus now shifts to Silverstone. Just check and see if Mike Crack said anything. Mike Crack has said anything. I love that man. Just for his name. Every time my videos I have to make sure I say Mike Crack because somebody will start. But yeah, nothing in there about reliability or anything.
Poor YouTube auto-generated captions on that one as well.
It's so, don't. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to be harsh on them, but you want to see a bit more, don't you? And that's based on where they are in the championship. But it's points on the board, which both drivers have said, which is important in the fight for Mercedes. I don't think they so 8 points for Alonso. So that's 9 points with Stroll's point today. So they didn't outscore, or they scored the same, didn't they, as Mercedes today? Because that'd be 6 and 3 is 9, and yes, they scored the same as Mercedes today, I think, with my very quick maths. So over the weekend, I think they've gained ground, but I expect to. I mean, it might be more. Yeah, Alonso might end up P5 if anything happens with these, with this review or this meeting with the FIA. So I don't know what to say. I'm just going to roll on. No offense to Aston Martin. You get lots of love every other weekend, so we'll roll on. Mercedes, Lewis Hamilton in P7, Russell in P8 in the end. Russell also scored a point in the sprint yesterday. Lewis Hamilton was P10. Hamilton, really in my notes for him, it's team radio. Lots of quotes. This car is slow, mate. Was one of them. Then got a black and white flag for track limits. As I can't keep it on the track, I can't turn. 5-second time penalty for track limits. As I say, brake problems. Now, not a mechanical issue, not a malfunction, as Ted Kravitz put it, but just that he couldn't get the car slowed down according to Mercedes. I think they reached a point with Toto Wolff where he'd had enough of hearing about it and said, Lewis, the car is bad, we know, but just drive it. So not a great weekend, not a great day for Mercedes, not a particularly fantastic weekend for Mercedes. Russell said after the race, it's, this is the same car they had at Spain, so why are things so different effectively? We were so good in Spain and here we are. It adds weight to the argument that Mercedes have definitely taken a step forward, but the Spain result was more about the fact that they always go well in Spain rather than the car has suddenly become that much closer to Red Bull or that much better. So I'm not saying they've not made a move forward. They absolutely have, but not the leap forward I think a lot of people thought they had after Spain. But kind of to steal Aston Martin's point, it is points on the board though, isn't it, Will? So, in a season-long fight with, there's 6 points between them, it's going to be close. Ferrari are coming back into it as well. Every single point could really be the difference between second and fourth in the constructors, and that's a lot of money. That's a few quid. Maybe a fiver here or there, it's good money.
Probably a little bit more than the fiver, don't you think? You're right. And as I was saying earlier, it's so tight in that battle for second between those three. And races like this, where maybe they aren't the quickest, it's all about kind of damage limitation. And for the most part, I think they did an all right job with that today. I tell you what, though, is that the first time we've heard Hamilton and Wolff publicly disagreeing over team radio? It kind of reminded me of when Steiner came in at was it Magnussen or Grosjean? I can't remember, one of the two. Yes, and then it was Grosjean. I was thinking it was Grosjean before at the US a few years ago. But I look back to Baku last year where Toto was very political on the matter, I guess you could say, and he was sort of admitting, look, we've got a crappy car, we're doing our best to fix it. Kind of felt now like he was getting a bit more fed up, and I know for a fact it'll start fueling contract rumors with that being the hot topic. It won't. At the end of the day, Hamilton will re-sign. It wouldn't actually shock me if we get an announcement before the British Grand Prix, given the timing of it. But but it is interesting because I don't think we've seen that dynamic, at least in the public eye, before.
No, that's a fair point. He's spoken to George, hasn't he, over team radio? Russell, sorry, over team radio, like he's a mate. George is here with me. Hi, George. Weird. Anyway, he's spoken to Russell before over radio, but I don't recall, not in that way. He's congratulated him over the radio before, or he's come over at the end and sort of said, sorry we couldn't give you a better car kind of thing. We know it's not good. We're working on it. We had that a few times last year, but not in that. I can't remember that kind of context. I'm sure chat will tell me if there is anything. Just have a quick check, see if anyone's said anything on that comment, but no, nothing at the moment, so let us know. But yeah, it's points on the board. It's not amazing for them. I know they want to be higher, but I think what will hurt them a little bit this weekend is that they lost to a customer on outright pace as well in McLaren today. That's going to sting a little bit, and of course Aston Martin as well anyway, but certainly having another customer ahead of them is going to hurt a little bit. But again, it's a step. They made a step forward in Spain. The gap has come down to Aston Martin. We know that it's close. They're second in the constructors. They're not going to beat Red Bull. Nobody is this year. So that's kind of the next thing, isn't it? Who can be best of the rest? Best of the rest used to be fourth, Will. It's now second. It's Red Bull and then everybody else, basically. So yeah, not much more on Mercedes. We're going nearly an hour. Let's fly through this field, and then I'm sure if we've got any questions. If you've got any questions later, please throw them out as if we missed anything you want us to go over. Not a problem at all. Alpine, Pierre Gasly was P9 and Ocon P12. Couple of points. 5-second penalty for Gasly. For track limits, I know, shocking, and 5-second time penalty for an unsafe release versus Sargent under virtual safety car stops for Esteban Ocon. So not a clean one for Alpine. Disappointed with their pace. I don't know. I maybe it's a track specific thing. Maybe they're dropping behind others. I don't know. We'll find out in the next few weeks, obviously, but Alpine have done all right this season, so I was expecting more this weekend. I thought they'd be fifth fastest at least, but especially after a couple of the things we saw in qualifying, I thought we were going to see some good stuff, but never really came to anything. Nothing really to add. It's just all track limits, isn't it, really, with this race? But it's cool. I guess, like Mercedes, it's a couple of points on the board, isn't it, Will? It's something that's going to be important for them come the end of the season. I mean, what does that do for their championship positions? Let's have a look. I need to go, and I usually have this open, but I completely forgot. So they stay where they were, 48 points. They're still 21 clear of McLaren. So, it's a couple of points at the end of the day. But I guess my question to you then, Will, is were you expecting more from Alpine this weekend? Is my ramblings?
I'll be honest, I kind of forgotten they were even there.
I didn't want to say.
They just sort of existed this weekend. Alpha are kind of similar as well, I think. But yeah, I guess it's a little bit surprising given they were on an upwards turn of form. And they did seem to be getting the hang of things with obviously the podium in Monaco. And then they had I think they had a strong weekend in Canada as well. Though I'm now second guessing that. I feel that there was something good that happened to them there. I just can't remember what it was. But yeah, this weekend just quiet. Didn't really contribute a lot to the whole weekend, and as I said, just sort of raced around and were there and they competed. So not a whole lot to add. I don't think it's a cause for concern yet. It's just one track. If it continues, then we start to worry about it.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. Dell, by the way, gets award for worst dad joke of the day. It says Alpine should be specialists at the Alpine track, really. Yeah, terrible Dell, but we love it. Keep them coming. I love terrible dad jokes and puns. Cited Canvas says Alpine had invisibility cloak activated for the race. Fair enough. Yeah, nothing against them, but maybe just one of those quiet days. Every team has them. Before I roll on, though, please do leave a like. Would be appreciated. As someone pointed out, more than 600 votes on the poll and only 100 likes. So, 100 likes is very nice, but let's try and get that up. 465 still here. Please do drop a like and don't forget to subscribe if you are new. Thank you for joining us, by the way. I know these can get a bit rambly and waffly at times, especially when we're staring at the FIA page constantly, but it's good to have you with us. So please do drop a like. Don't forget to subscribe. What's coming up next week, Will? Silverstone next week. Yes, straight back into another race. So good stuff. And, mini victory this week. 4 lots of content in 5 days from Sean. I mean, that's Jesus. Somebody slept well this week. To be putting that amount out. It's like the old days on the channel. Williams are the next, I believe. Yes, they are. Alex Albon in P11, just missing out on a point. Well, by 10.7 seconds, but one place outside the points. Sargent down in 30th. I say down in 30th. I think that's his best result of the year. That moves him up ahead of Nick De Vries in the World Championship to P19. So, possibly, arguably, Sargent's best weekend. But we'll start with Albon. Really slippery in a straight line, as it always is for Williams. It's just something in that car is fantastic. We saw it in Canada. So when we get to these sorts of tracks, they're always going to do fairly well. I think he feels he could have got a point in the sprint yesterday had they not pitted for slick so late in the sprint. But, shoulda, woulda, coulda, unfortunately. But decent from Williams today. And it's good to see Sargent only a couple of places behind his teammate, because he has spent quite a lot of time well adrift of his teammate this season. So maybe a confidence boost for Logan, but another great weekend for Alex. He's impressed me this season, Will. He really has, as Albon.
Yeah, no, I was about to say the exact same thing, and I'll touch on Sargent first. I think this was probably setting up to be one of his best races of the season so far. And then I think the penalty for track limits kind of derailed it somewhat, but he was doing really, really well before that. And qualifying still needs a bit of work, but as far as race pace went, I think it was much better. Albon, again, as you said, really, really impressive, as he has been all year. And from a qualifying point of view, did he get into Q3 both times? Definitely, he got into Q3 on the Friday. I can't remember whether he got into SQ3 on the Saturday now. But if he wasn't, then he was I think he might have just missed out now I think about it. But he got very close. And just doing bits for a Williams team that have been a bit underrated this entire season, I think. I think we all kind of just expect them to be a backmarker now. But no, they've done really well. And obviously we're looking forward to what is supposedly going to be a historic livery change for the British Grand Prix. I can't wait for that. I don't know about you, but I can't remember. You're London based. You're not London based,
No,
are you?
Lincoln.
But
I'm all the way up here.
I say I'm heading over to their event that they've got up on the Wednesday because Albon's making an appearance there, and I wonder if they'll have the new livery on the show car that they've got. But
Maybe.
I'm praying we get like a '90s tribute. That appears to be that's the rumor I've seen, that it's some sort of historical tribute, which might sort of take it back to the Cannons Williams days of Mansell,
Yeah,
and
that'd be nice.
that would be so good. It'd be so good. So that's what I'm hoping for, but I'm sure we'll see later in the week.
Just on Albon, yeah, Q3 he made it into, and SQ3 he missed out by, he was 11th, so missed out by 4/10 in the end. But yeah, it's just, I don't know. I don't know what I expected when Albon got given that seat, but I didn't expect him to hit the ground running like he did last season and carry that into this year. Obviously helped because Williams are definitely taking steps forward this year. I think James Vowles behind the scenes is working miracles. I know this isn't his car. This car would have already been sorted before he came in, but I'm looking if this is what he's able to do at the moment with pushing updates and motivating the team and getting people in the right place. I'm really looking forward to see where Williams are next year. Really like James Vowles. Really like Alex Albon. I think Logan Sargent, fantastic weekend from him. So let's just see what chat is saying actually on Williams quickly. Just add on liveries. If they can't do the Canon style liveries, then maybe go back to the Rothmans one and maybe something historic for like our last World Championship was 97. This is the livery we ran. Obviously, they can't have the branding on there, but they can find ways around it. Kind of used to a Martini, for goodness sake. So I'm sure they'll be able to work it out. Williams is showing a lot more promise than Haas is. That said, if Haas can get their time-munching nature of the cars under control, they could be really fast, says Cardi. And Albon said in the post-interview there should be grass at turn 10. He's 100% right, says Nick. I think Albon will be back in the Red Bull in 2025, Nick says as well. So he's getting his 2025 driver line predictions in. I've not even done my 2024 yet. So there you go. Murray says 2019 livery tribute. Not the Winfield livery, no. That's where I blame that livery for when it all starts to go wrong for Williams. It's not the livery, it's the car. But, there you go. Vowles and Albon combo is good for Williams moving forward in the future, says Cited Canvas. Absolutely. Fantastic. Well done, Williams, this weekend. Well done, Sargent, as well. Like I say, he's off the foot of the table now. He just needs that first point. I don't know if I want him to get it first or De Vries. I love Nick De Vries. I know you're not a massive fan, Will, generally, but I do like Nick De Vries.
I won't tell you my new nickname for. I can't tell you my new nickname for Nick De Vries because I know you're not a massive fan of swearing on the channel, so you'll just have to watch my video on him for that one. But
is it epic De Vries?
It's not Quick Nick anymore. Let's just put it that way. Yeah, I like Sargent. I really liked him in F2, and it's a shame that he's not really transitioned to F1 like a duck to water like we might have hoped. But it is his first season, and I'm hoping this is the kind of springboard he can use to propel himself into some better results. Because I know it's his first season, but I think he has caused a bit of strain with the Williams higher ups. So I don't think a drive next year is a complete guarantee yet, despite Williams might wanting to give him time. I think he deserves another year. And then if he still can't do anything, then fine, fair enough, get rid of him. But if they gave Latifi another year, they can give Sargent another year. Is my argument. But I think it comes down to how many times he puts the car on the wall, which he hasn't done now for two weekends. Did he do it at Monaco? I don't think he did. 3 weekends then. No, was it Spain? Spain was the last since Spain. And Spain came, so 2 weekends he's not put it in the wall for. So, there you go. He's got that. So hopefully it's a confidence booster, and he can do a lot with it.
Albon says it was a strong weekend for us. Our worst result was 13th, where we were running P7 for most of it. So when you think about it like that, it is frustrating, but it shows we are making steps forward. So sort of what we were talking about a minute ago, actually. So that's good for him. Just checking to see if there was anything wrong with Logan. feels like they're finally moving forward in the right direction. So that's good stuff. But yeah, like I say, first season for Logan Sargent. Yuki Tsunoda, a lot of people wanted him. I'm not saying you were saying this, Will, by the way. But a lot of people wanted Tsunoda gone after his first season because he kept crashing, and look where he is now. He's having a great season, or as good as he can in that car. So hopefully Sargent can do the same. Alfa Romeo, Bottas was P16, Zhou in P14. So Zhou finishing ahead of his teammates. Zhou, Ted Kravitz said that on the team radio he felt like the car was carrying too much wing and was slow in a straight line, so that's probably what's hampered him there. Where was he? 3.2 off Sargent in the end, so not really challenging, but well clear of De Vries, who was 10 seconds behind him. Bottas maybe compromised a little bit by his front wing damage. There is a picture of that coming up, so front wing, flappy front wing end plate.
I mean, maybe he figured he had too much wing as well and just wanted to fix the problem. Maybe that's what it is.
Come on, Joe, stick it in the wall, mate. You should crash it. Come on, you should understand this now. Take your front wing off, you'll have less wing. It's perfect. But yeah, so that was kind of the issue for Bottas today with the front wing issue. No press release yet from Alfa Romeo. They seem to be going to be the slowest now for some reason, but maybe they're waiting for a decision. Maybe they're expecting everyone ahead of them to be disqualified, and they get a nice 1-2 finish. Not going to happen, is it? So you never know. You never know. But yeah, a good race from Williams, but not so much from Alfa Romeo is kind of how I'm summing those two teams up. Even though Zhou wasn't that far off Sargent in the end, I think... Do you know, actually, I'll tell you what it is. I'm just going to say it. I cannot work Alfa Romeo out this season at all, Will. I cannot get my head around them. You look at how they started last season. They went backwards from there. It was very much a season of two halves, and they just seem to have really struggled. And I can't work out... You know, a lot of people will argue that AlphaTauri is the worst car, but we've got the Haas's at the back, Hulkenberg retiring today. You've got Alfa Romeo are all over the place, and I can't work it out at the back there. And I'm just frustrated because I thought they'd take another step forward this year, and it's just not happening. And that's all I'm going to say.
It's almost a similar situation to what we have at the front with Mercedes, Ferrari, and Aston. We've got these three teams at the back, which very much dependent on what track we're at. Depends on their order. Now, yeah, like Haas, we've seen at the back, and then we saw both cars in SQ3 yesterday, didn't we? So the problem with Haas is just their race pace is so poor. But Alpha are a weird one. Bottas, I think, is having one of his worst years in Formula One, and this weekend I think started better, though he did drift back in the race. I still don't know how he picked up that front wing damage. I know we were joking about it earlier, but I don't know where that came from. It just suddenly appeared on the car one lap, and that probably did hinder him. But it was a better weekend in what's been a pretty disappointing season for the Finn, if I'm honest, and one that for some reason people aren't talking about. I know I made a video on it a while back, and it got a bit of traction then. But yeah, that's just to clarify. That's not saying that I suddenly influenced the state of F1 news. But
Will's got all the influence.
I know, man. You know, I'm just that big now. But no. But yeah, it's just been a really poor season compared to what we saw last year, where he was really good. Maybe part of that's down to Zhou getting better. Maybe part of that is down to the car being a bit trash this year. But yeah, just. A bit of a shame because, as you said, they did make quite a big step forward, and that Sauber team in general have been kind of known to start season strong and then tail off. And it seemed like last year that tail off came a little bit later, but it's almost carried into this year where they've now started on the back foot and are going even further back. So, yeah, I don't know what to do with them. I'm kind of in the same boat as you.
What are we going to do with them, Will? What are we going to do with them? It's just not good enough. Yeah, I mean, well, in the F1 Manager game, they were ridiculously OP, but it didn't really follow through, did it? So, yeah, not much to say on them, but, you know, hopefully they can come good. Very bright days ahead for that team, potentially, with Audi coming in, so maybe we're going to have a few seasons where it's a bit all over the place, and they're preparing for that, aren't they, very much? So, I don't want to make that as an excuse, because that's a bit down the line yet, but you know what I mean? There's going to be a lot of focus on that, so...
Red Bull used to be Jaguar. Think of it that way.
Yeah.
So these teams can make strides up the field. It just takes a while. So, yeah, with that investment coming in, and that investment guaranteed, it's going to be a big step forward for them at that point. But I think it's just a case of, as the team as they are now, just surviving on what they have and praying 2026 comes round incredibly quickly.
Alpha Tauri then. Tsunoda was 18th. De Vries was 15th. De Vries ahead of Tsunoda. Not much on De Vries. 5-second time penalty forcing Magnussen off the track. That was at turn 6. Magnussen's gone around the outside. De Vries has run him out of road. Fairly consistent in what we've seen in recent years. I think Perez and Leclerc had a few moments like that, so fairly consistent there. But, not a terrible day for Nick, despite that penalty, to be 15th, ahead of Bottas, Piastri, Tsunoda and Magnussen. But, I'm not talking about future again. I did that on Friday, but it's not looking great for Nick De Vries. Tsunoda, contact on lap 1 at turn 1, pitted at the end of the first lap for a new front wing after hitting Ocon. That's what I was trying to say. Late braking at turn 4 and went straight on at turn 4 as well into the gravel on lap 1. I forgot about that one. And got a brace yourself 5-second time penalty for track limits, followed by a 10-second penalty for 7 track limits. I didn't know you could bank them like that, but apparently you can. So there you go. So not a great day for AlphaTauri, not a great day for Tsunoda and De Vries. By the way, I'll tell you how uneventful De Vries' day was. There were no pictures of him on XPB from Sunday, so the pictures you've got are from yesterday, I'm afraid.
He did run Magnussen
that's
into the gravel. That was and then he ran wide himself later on. Kind of a very De Vries race, really. I know you like him. I'm sorry, but
I like him. I'm not going to sit here and pretend he's been doing a great job. But having said that, just to read you this press release, Will, and please don't laugh at this first line. Nick De Vries says, "I think it was a solid race today. We made some overnight changes to the car. We've just sat saying it's been terrible for AlphaTauri, and we start off with it's a solid race." He knows better than us, of course. Made some overnight changes to the car, of course, starting from the pit lane. Certainly played out well for us at the virtual safety car, closed the gap between all the cars. In terms of execution, I think we did a good job and extracted the maximum out of our package, which is a fair comment because I think, to answer the question that came up a few weeks ago, I think that is the slowest car on the grid. So if they're getting the maximum out of it, then 15th is probably the best they could do without utter chaos. Anything else in there? Yeah, nothing really. Anything on the penalty? Take the penalty that the stewards gave me. We were just trying to find the limit, but thankfully we made... Well, nothing on the Magnussen one. He's talking about the track positions there, so interesting. And Yuki Tsunoda says, at the start, I was aggressive trying to make up as many positions as possible. It could have gone well, but unfortunately, we damaged the car. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. I don't have pace, or I didn't have pace, so it was a super difficult drive. I couldn't keep the car within the track limits, and I can definitely learn from this in the future. But overall, it was just a challenging race. So De Vries feels it was a solid race, which, again, he's beating his teammate, and if he feels he's got the most out of that car, then I'll defend him on that a bit, Will. That is a solid result if that's how he feels about that. It just doesn't look it, does it, for a team that only a couple of years ago were pushing for 5th in the Constructors. That was the big goal from Franz Tost, and here we are now a couple of years later, and they're absolutely nowhere, and that's a shot of one of them outside of track limits at turn 10 for everybody. So there you go, but not a huge amount to add unless you want to say something, Will, without going too hard on De Vries. Or speaking too long about De Vries. We could be here all night.
I mean, I feel like I should be in a after 23 years should be in a loving relationship right now. Doesn't change the fact that I'm not. So it's Will. That was a little bit too self-deprecating. It was a little bit too self-deprecating. That
sips out the bottle of vodka.
But yeah, I mean, it's great for De Vries to say that, but on the whole, he still. I mean, where did he finish? I actually don't know, but I'm just going to assume it was 15th. At the back. Okay, that's a bit better than I expected, but still, it's not a great. It's not been a great year, and if this race was slightly better, despite every time the camera cut to him, he was somewhere shoving someone into a gravel trap or in the runoff himself, then yeah, I don't know. I just think it's a bit. Again, we've said enough on De Vries already. I don't need to reiterate what you were saying in your video earlier anyway. So, just you keep thinking that, De Vries, that's fine.
Mike, thank you very much for your super chat. Sorry again, I missed that one. It's only just updated on Streamlabs. It says, my guess is Checo replaced by Tsunoda with a Wassa or another junior filling the seat in 2025. Need to keep the junior cycle running, or they may as well just sell AlphaTauri. Fair point. Thank you very much, Mike, for your super chat. If you want to put your own super chat in, feel free. We'll do Q&A in just a moment as well. So that's probably a good time if you're saving that one. Probably a good time to do it then. But thank you very much for your support. Last team, Haas, Hulkenberg, DNF, Magnussen, last P19. We'll do Hulkenberg quickly. Pissed at the end of lap 11 for Haas after starting to lose places. So tyres going off. Stopped on lap 14, lost power. Car was smoking, and that was it. That brought out the safety car, or the virtual safety car, which is what triggered all those stops. We did get a safety car, by the way, on lap 1 for Tsunoda's incident. So just to point that one out. Magnussen was slow when the safety car came out. And Sky did say possible ERS issue. But it could have been a timing tower issue because he gained several places on the timing tower as the safety car came out, and then all of a sudden fell back down. So I assume that's what it was, because the pace was fine and there were no issues whatsoever. Outside De Vries, turn 6, I've already said, and into the gravel. He felt De Vries pushed him off. The stewards agreed. 5-second penalty. And of course, Magnussen joins the list of 7 drivers with a penalty for track limits. 5-second time penalty, which put him 19th. So he would have finished ahead of Tsunoda in 18th. So it's not completely destroyed his race, that 5-second time penalty. But, you know, it's not ideal, is it, in that situation? But Haas, great result for Hulkenberg yesterday in the sprint. I thought he was going to get the podium in the sprint, Will, because then it would just be so Hulkenberg that his stats would say he's never had an F1 podium, even though he would have been on the podium in a sprint. And it just feels like it's very Hulkenberg when it comes to Formula One and Hulkenberg stats. So I expected that. But great drive yesterday for a couple of points, or a few points to add to their constructors' tally. But in races, they're just nowhere. I mean, Steiner said before the weekend that they would treat this as a bit of a test session. So I hope that they've got the data they need from Magnussen in the Grand Prix today, because they've got the one-lap pace, certainly in the hands of Hulkenberg, but when it comes to a Sunday, they just drop like a stone.
Yeah, and Kevin's shown good one-lap pace as well. Look at Miami, for instance. Sorry. Where was it, P4, I think, for Haas in Miami? So they can do it on one lap, but the problem is they just can't keep their tires in the window. That Haas car is just a serial killer for Pirelli rubber. Yeah, and funny about what you said, Hulkenberg. I completely agree, and I think I said the exact same thing. Yeah, it's just the most Hulkenberg thing that could possibly happen. Get a podium, and it's not classified as an actual podium. Yeah, and then with K-Mag, you're right. The timing tower was definitely glitched because he started from the pit lane. I think that must have been a record if he'd started from the pit lane, and by the end of lap 1, he was 8th. Didn't stop Crofty missing that point, though. I think Magnussen's got a problem. Like, no, it's just the timing tower, Crofty. Come on. He started from the pit lane. He's not in the points at the end of lap 1. I don't care how crazy you think it is. But yeah, I think Haas is just such a tricky one at the moment. I want them to do well, but they just haven't got the car that can survive a race. Doesn't matter how good it shows. It doesn't matter how good your qualifying car is. Remember a few years ago when we were talking about whether you should design cars just for qualifying because it was so hard to overtake at the time, and you might as well design a car that's very quality focused, and then you just hang in there in the race and use dirty air to your advantage. I think it's not necessarily as much better as maybe we wanted it to be coming into these new regulations, but you can't get away with doing that anymore. And again, I don't think it's necessarily deliberate to this extent, but that Haas car needs to work on its race pace, even if it does compromise its quality performance somewhat. You've got to make that, because again, if you can start 4th, great. But if you finish the race 16th, 17th, it doesn't matter. The Sunday is the most important day at the end of things.
The one and only Ace making a great point in chat says, not a timing tower issue for Magnussen. He pitted at the end of lap 1, so overtook almost everyone going into the pits and then lost all the places. Thank you very much, mate. That makes a lot of sense, because he can go flat out, can't he, under safety car into the pit lane. So yeah, thank you very much. Appreciate that. I'm not sure I missed that one, but there we go. That's it for running through the field then, which means driver of the day. Lando Norris got driver of the day. Let me know one surname in chat. I have a feeling I know which way this is going to go, but let me know who your driver of the day is. I'll read a few out in a few moments. Will, who you got?
I think Verstappen's got to be up there. He drove a very, very solid race, and yeah, I think if we weren't in a period of Verstappen dominance, then he'd definitely be up there for driver of the day. Pole, fastest lap at the end, eked out a massive lead. That's also the boring choice. So Norris is also up there. Perez, you could chuck in as
Yeah, got a
well.
penalty though,
But
Perez. I not
he
points off for
did.
that.
Yeah, yeah. Wait, did Perez get a penalty? Or did you mean Norris?
Oh no, he didn't, did he? No, sorry, no, he got a black and white flag. That's what's saying. Sorry, not a penalty.
Yeah. I think Norris got the penalty.
He didn't.
But...
He might.
Oh wait, hang on. No, yeah, no, you're right. Sorry, I'm just getting completely confused now.
Sainz got the penalty. Norris might. We don't know yet.
Yeah,
they all might yet.
Oh, well, yeah. It's too late in the day. If I had to pick one driver, let's go with Verstappen. I'll make it a change. I don't think I've ever given Verstappen driver of the day, but he drove a very, very solid race today, and no matter how dominant he has been all year, I think that still needs to be appreciated. So there you go.
Yeah, I think even with his penalty, you can throw Sainz in there just for a nod because he pushed hard today. Did a good job fighting with Perez as well. So, all right, fighting the inevitable, but it was still good to watch. So I think give him a nod there, but I can't give him driver of the day for the penalty. And I'd love to give it to Perez, but black and white flag, you're not keeping it in track limits. So I think Norris is a very good shout. And I agree with Verstappen. I mean, what can you say? If we always go for the winner as driver of the day, because I mean, officially, if you want to get really, really pedantic about it, technically, Verstappen is driver of the day because he finished first out of 20 drivers, but that gets very boring very quickly. Picking the same driver, the winner is, and that means they're driver of the day. So I think Leclerc deserves a mention as well. I think, yes, he's a long way off Verstappen, but I think he did a good job today. His strategy was decent. He drove well.
Sorry, I've just seen Perez Intimidator of the day, and I've lost it.
Fair enough. I'll go Norris. I'll go with the popular opinion for a change on driver of the day. I'll go with Norris because you went Verstappen. I'd have probably picked him anyway because it's me. But yeah, I'll go with Norris this time around. So, what are you saying in chat? Moray says Verstappen. Dory Skog says Verstappen as well. Michael says Norris. Charles says Stoff. Thank you very much, Charles. Very good. Siggy says, I thought Sainz did a really good work. Valentine says Lando. Fanta Boy says Leclerc. The one and only says Sainz raced very well despite Ferrari's best efforts to thwart him. Viasa says Sainz, Hulk driver of yesterday, says Jonathan. Fair enough. Mamo says Sainz or Verstappen. Mike says I voted for Norris, so Norris. Red Raven says driver of the weekend, Hulkenberg. Andrew's gone with Norris. Michael's gone with Verstappen. Zach says not hard not to pick Lando. Agree. Ronnie, Carlos, Nick says Sainz. Sean Morrill says Perez. Del says just give everyone another 5 second. But that's it, Stuart. Just give everyone a 5 second penalty and then it all stays as it is and it's all sorted. Matthew says driver of the day, track limits. Fair enough. Free says definitely not Sainz, Perez or Alonso, if not the official one. Yep, Sainz, intimidator of the day from Dell and Cited Canvas. Jonathan says to stewards. Pascal says Sainz and Norris. Jonathan says Sargent. I wouldn't give driver of the day, but I think he deserves a bit of a nod just for what was, I think, his best drive today so far in F1. Hopefully those points aren't too far away. Let's see. KMS Boss says Yuki. Andrew says, how can anyone vote for Sainz after he whined about being intimidated? Well, it's not just about the team radio. Otherwise, there's drivers that would never have won driver of the day for moaning on team radio. And by the way, just to be clear, if I was an F1 driver, I'd do nothing but moan on team radio. I've got the stream to moan on, so I'm all right. But Mr. Bungle says Leclerc is literally robbed. And Jonathan says divorce of the day, Lewis and Toto. Lovely. If you have any questions, please do pop them in chat. Ideally related to the race, but we'll answer anything really, won't we? Will within reason. So we're happy with that. Don't forget to drop a like as well. We're nearly at 150. Let's see if we can get that to 200. 443 of you are here. So if we can get that to 200, that'd be massively appreciated. If we've missed anything as well, please do let us know and we'll talk about that too. So good stuff. I think I don't really think there's much more to say on track limits, having said we'd come back to it later in the stream, because we've sort of said it, haven't we, Will, that the rules are the rules, so it is what it is. You've got to follow those rules, and if you go over track limits 3 times in a race, you get a black and white flag. 4 times, you get a penalty. And just to my point that, yes, 7 drivers got penalties, but 13, as it stands, didn't. So it's not something that we're arguing about every weekend. It's really only this seems like a track specific thing. So do we need here's the question then. Do we need a knee-jerk reaction to change the track limits rules, or do we need something to change before we come back to Austria next year? My opinion on that is it's Austria rather than the rule that's the issue. But then, again, 13 drivers kept it within track limits, and George Russell didn't even get a warning, so...
Yeah, I would say it's probably a bit of both. Maybe not necessarily the rule, but how it is monitored needs to change. Sort of as I said earlier, Formula One have enough money to invest in sensors that can work out whether a car is in or out of the track limits or not. So, yeah, I think it's a bit of both, but it's a problem that we shouldn't have at this stage. Is my personal view on it, especially where we are now with all these protests and the race being potentially changed after it's finished. It doesn't sit particularly right with me, but that's my take.
Yeah, and at least with the rule, a lot of people in chat saying change the track and not the rule. So at least with the rule, we know 4 wheels over the white line, it's a warning, deleted lap time, whatever. I don't know what you can do to Austria as a track. Whether you need a specific rule for Austria, maybe instead of 3 you get 5 or something like that, and a bit more leeway. I don't know, but 3 warnings or 3 strikes and you get 5 instead. I don't know, but it's difficult to know what to do with Austria because again, the bikes don't want gravel and they don't want grass there, do they? So it depends on whether. It's not just bikes though, is it? It's not just bikes that don't like that. There are other series as well that don't. So
how easy is it to remove and place in gravel traps? I have no idea.
Well, you'd have to dig up the runoff every year, wouldn't you? But then they do it in Australia, the Australian Grand Prix. So, but then that's the difference between grass and concrete, I suppose.
Yeah, I don't know. Or if there's some sort of temporary material they can put down, which stops it. But yeah, it's a difficult one because obviously Austria is very focused on its bike racing. So it's tough. It's tough, but realistically, if Australia can accommodate, surely a purpose-built track, which you'd think might have more time to make these adjustments, can do it as well.
Some great suggestions in chat. As you can imagine, Purple Zebra says shark pit. Sir Ken Charlotte says electrify the white lines. Glue traps for mice would work, says Moray. Why not? Cardi says, how about a small barrier on the other side and just put a very shallow pool of water there? That could be interesting. And Zach says you could use only a strip of grass or gravel rather than the whole runoff. That's what I thought, Zach. I thought if you can put it, because we know how wide these cars are, so put it a car's width from the edge of the white line to the other side of the curb or whatever, a little strip of gravel, and then you've solved the problem. But that's easy. Again, that's easy in digging up runoff areas. But
that's a great idea actually, because the motorbike shouldn't go that wide anyway. So, I don't know. Maybe they do. I'm not a massive motorbike fan, but they're obviously thinner than a Formula One car. So if you put it out that wide,
sorry, Will, I was going to say they have no issue with a track like Jeddah existing, so just stick a wall there. Clearly, they're not that bothered.
Yeah,
just stick some Tech Pro there. I'm not being serious, by the way. Jonty would kill me if he heard that. I'm not being serious. I'm just making the point that you've got a track like Jeddah that's high speed and there are walls all over the place, and that's like, safety this, safety that, and fair enough. But a wall there solves the problem. But let's not go down that route with Formula One. That would be absolutely shocking. Absolutely shocking. It's just not. If John T is listening, he's probably on his way now to punch me, which I won't blame him for at all. So yeah, look, we'll not go on about it. I'll keep an eye on the FIA decision. See what's going on. If you've got any questions, we'll come to you now and see what you're saying in chat rather than your genius ideas. I'm loving electrifying the white lines. Look, just like you see that like in TV game shows they have sometimes. There's just a little electric shock under the bum. Every time you go over, you get a little shock, and then can't do that again. That hurt.
I think you can do great things with the tracker. Every time it happens, you also have the team radio automatically turns on, so you can get it over the live feed. Every time they get shocked, you just get a little squeal over the radio.
Yes. Do you know what? I pay an extra subscription fee to listen to that.
Oh, I would. There you go. We don't need F1 TV anymore. We just need electrified TV. That's what we need.
Oh
Brilliant.
dear. That's it. I'm sending the letter in right now. We're working on it. That's it. Yeah. So, back to chat. Let's see what's going on. What about the red paint from France that destroys tires?
Did that really work though?
It's probably more of a deterrent than the one what we have in Austria, but it's not as effective as a gravel trap, is it? Or for example,
I'm also convinced it's just a myth. Like they've just said it does what it does. I've never actually seen any proof that it actually degrades the tires faster. But I don't know. Yeah, I never thought that was a particularly great solution, but because it was so far on the end of the circuit anyway. I know the blue stuff technically was a little bit more degrading, but yeah, I don't believe that was a. I think it was more of a gimmick than a solution.
It feels a little bit really tasteless to go into this direction, having just sat laughing about electrocuting drivers. But Waldo says thoughts on Spa crash and what changes should be done. Now I said we come to this because first of all, it's I said at the start, 18 years old. I can't imagine what his family are going through. So again, thoughts and condolences are absolutely with them. It's unbelievable. I have seen it. I'm so sure many of you have. I've seen the incident. It's difficult to really. I suppose I'll caveat it immediately. It's difficult for me to come to a definitive answer because, and I don't think any of us should yet, because we have a camera angle and some amateur footage, and you can't even see through the spray. So we don't know what's happened between Radion and the start of the Kemmel Straight. We don't know if it's aquaplaning, if there's been contact. We've not seen the full investigation. So until that comes out, I don't want to sit here and start saying this is definitively what happened. But my view from what I've seen is very much in line with what Fernando Alonso said. And I've put his quote down here because I think it's important. So he said, spray needs to be studied to reduce it. I don't know if Spa is the problem. I guess in Monza it will be the same thing. If you find one car in the middle of the straight in Monza, you will not be able to see it, and that's the real problem. For me, again, based on the very limited information we have and what we've seen and the very limited footage we have, it looks more to me like it's a visibility and track condition or weather conditions issue rather than an Eau Rouge Radion issue. I can't remember his name. I've forgotten. I feel awful now. The guy in second or third place at the time, he comes up, runs wide at Radion and does spin back across the track and hits the wall and then kind of comes back on, then turns away to get himself out the firing line. Whether there's been a chain reaction there, I don't know. So to say it's absolutely nothing to do with the corner is possibly not totally correct, but it was further on the Kemmel Straight, a little bit further on at that kink where it all happened. So the argument about Eau Rouge and Radion is a completely valid debate, but I don't think just instantly going, as a lot of people have, that corner needs to change because that's caused this is correct. I'm not convinced it's the corner. I mean, they are up at speed, and if the corner's slower, then they're not carrying that speed. So there is that argument, but I don't think this has been caused by that corner. Again, I don't want to speculate too much, Will. It's a difficult subject anyway, so soon after the fact and with so little information, but that's just sort of the conclusion I've come to based on the very limited information we have. As Valentine says, we need the whole picture before we can say absolutely this is what happened, but that's just from what we have, what I've seen, and what Fernando Alonso has said. I think he's been very Fernando Alonso about it, very, very to the point, but also very, well, frank about it, I suppose. He's not, I'm not trying to criticise any of the drivers. He's not gone in with just emotion. He sort of sat and said, look, this is an issue that we know. I mean, we've got these wheel arches coming, haven't we? They're going to be tested this month, July, on Formula One cars on the rear wheels to make sure that spray is reduced or see if it does make a difference. So they know it's an issue and they're addressing it. But for me, it's more, should that race have restarted rather than let's dig up Eau Rouge and Radion and put something else there.
Yeah, I'm actually in complete agreement with you on that. Again, I'm not going to have a fully, a full 100% view on it until we get some sort of FIA report on an actual investigation that looks at all the facts from an unbiased point of view. But there was a tweet, and I can't remember who it was now that posted it, but put a side-by-side comparison of that race and then Spa in 2020. And obviously, that one was never really started. And there's a very big similarity in the conditions there. So I'm with you in the sense that it's condition based, and visibility looked absolutely awful. And the problem isn't, again, I'm trying to remember which one of the drivers. It might have been Alonso, but it might also have been Verstappen or Hamilton that said it. That these kids that are racing, they're paying for their seats. They've got sponsors to uphold, and also they're a lot younger and more inexperienced. They are less willing to come over the radio and say we should not be racing in these conditions because they're trying to prove themselves. The guys in Formula One are already there; they're already doing that. They're established. These younger guys in the lower formulas are still trying to get to that level, and will take any opportunity they can to show their stuff. And I think, again, I can't remember what driver it was that was saying it, that the decision needs to be taken out of their hands in that, especially in those lower formulas, and they should never have restarted that race. But again, I won't come up with a definitive answer to it until I've seen and read a full investigation, full report on the incident. But obviously it's a very horrible thing to happen, and it has put a bit of a shadow on the whole weekend, unfortunately. And obviously we're heading over to Spa in, I think, 4 weeks, aren't we?
Yeah.
For the race itself, and I'm sure that'll be quite a poignant weekend now, given what's happened. I think it was Perez saying that there needs to be changes to the circuit in that time. I don't know whether I agree with that. I think a knee-jerk reaction might actually be worse. But in fairness, I don't know what you could do in that space of time as well that would be effective. So yeah, it's a horrible situation, and one that obviously we wish never to happen. But you can never make motorsport 100% safe, and as is anything in life, it's impossible to make it 100% safe. So yeah, just a really difficult one.
It is, and I think changes at the moment. We need to see the whole report, like we keep saying, and I am going to keep making sure I say that. And there will be a full investigation. They will, I'm sure, release that, and then things will change if they need to. If it turns out that it was the corner that was at fault or deemed to be part of the problem, then yes, let's do that. But I'm not going to do that today because I don't. And I'm not. By the way, just to be clear, I am very much a traditionalist in Formula One. I love a lot of the traditional stuff, but I'm not madly in love with a corner. If it's a bit of tarmac, if they need to, or asphalt, whatever you want to call it, if they want to dig it up and put something else there or whatever they can do, we'll get over it. We've lost some great corners in F1 over the years. Bridge at Silverstone, I will never ever let that go. It's Silverstone next week. I will not let Bridge go ever. So
final corner in Mexico as well.
Yeah,
another one that we've lost.
Happens sometimes. Formula One grows. It sometimes outgrows tracks, and they have to make changes. But that's probably a conversation for another day. Just on what they could change, though. Well, just on your point. In '94, after Senna's death, they went on a big safety push, which is absolutely right. And they had like a little chicane at the bottom. So you come out of La Source, you follow that down, and just at the bottom of Eau Rouge, you go left and then right and then up the hill to slow them down. So there could be something like that if that's doable. But again, we need to wait for the...
But in that case, the track would have to be completely re-evaluated by the FIA. It is their time to do that.
Yeah, it would
with 4 weeks to go,
though, wouldn't it?
Then again, Jeddah, I think that was very last minute as well, wasn't it? When the first year we went there, so maybe it's doable, but or maybe the FIA can put in some sort of clause that speeds that process up. But then again, is that safe if you speed up that process? Because you actually be putting the drivers at more risk. It's a really tricky one.
It's a bit more notice, but it was kind of the argument about Indianapolis 2005, wasn't it? We can't just stick a chicane there at short notice because it's not been homologated, and if that caused an accident, then you've got an absolute nightmare lawsuit on your hands. So a little bit more time to sort something, but I think conditions were the issue. And I've seen people say maybe we shouldn't race at Spa when it rains at all, but then you're never going to race at Spa because there's always rain at some point, or it feels like there's always rain at some point. And actually in F1 generally at the moment, it feels like there's rain every weekend. So I think to your point, actually, Will, if 2021 wasn't safe to go ahead in the Formula One car, then yesterday, with the benefit of hindsight, wasn't right to go ahead with that. Was it yesterday or Friday? It was yesterday, wasn't it? And I do want to answer this point. I'm not having to go at anybody, but Nick says, do we have to discuss it? We're obviously not qualified to judge. I agree, we're not qualified to judge. However, this channel was built on me giving my view on things, but it was also built on us not being afraid to approach difficult conversations. And I feel like I'd be doing you a disservice if we just went through this stream and didn't mention it at all. That's kind of why, we've approached some very difficult stuff on this channel in the last 6 years. So 6 years, wow, Jesus. But yeah, so I completely see what you're saying, Nick, but I'd be doing you a disservice if I didn't sit here and at least have a view on it. But also that's why I'm heavily caveating it with, we need to just wait and see what happens. Because if I sit here and say it wasn't Eau Rouge and it wasn't Radion and blah blah blah, or this happened, that happened, and it turns out that that's not correct, then I've lied to you all. I've made a fool of myself, and I've done something that would be quite disrespectful. So let's see what the FIA say, see what the investigation is. But ultimately, at the end of the day, whatever your view, just try and remember that an 18-year-old boy has gone, is dead, has lost his life. I don't know if it's an age thing, Will, but when I'm 37, and when I get, I'm at a point now where that just seems ludicrous that an 18-year-old has lost their life, but it doesn't just happen in motorsport. Let's not get too deep into that, because that'll get very depressing very quickly, but it seems to hit harder when you're a bit older, mate. I don't know why. So I'm like, yeah, wow. So yeah, obviously, again, condolences, thoughts with his family and everyone involved as well on that day, because I remember when it happened with Antoine Hubert, how hard it hit the F2 drivers and co, so... and some of the F1 drivers, so hopefully everyone is supported as they should be, is what I'll say on there. So let's see what you're saying in chat. Let's move on to questions. But again, just on the corner, I'm not gonna get stroppy about changing corners in F1. It happens all the time, and Eau Rouge and Radion are incredible corners. They're amazing to watch drivers at. But if the drivers start saying that it needs to change, then circuit bosses need to listen. They didn't listen to Jackie Stewart originally. In fact, I believe the media, I always go back to this, Will, just totally on topic but a little bit off. The media refers, I believe it the quote, or along the lines of Jackie Stewart when he was pushing for safety. He faced opposition from drivers, from Formula One, from the media, and the media, I think, referred to him as a pious Scot with beady little eyes. I mean, that's how they thought, they thought anybody talking about safety back then was just a bit of a coward. And it's like, no. You're right, Will. You'll never make Formula One or any motorsport completely safe, but you can do everything you can to make it as safe as possible. It's very weird, some people's approach to safety. I see it all the time. Well, they know the risks. Well, yeah, but if you lost a family member in a car crash on the A16 between Louth and Grimsby, I don't know why that's going to my head, but it has, then, they knew the risks when they got in the car. It's just a crap argument, but I take the point. Anyway, let's move on, Will. Unless you've got anything you want to quickly add.
No, I think I've said my piece.
Awesome. I'm trying to find a question that isn't related to that, or a point isn't related to that. So, thank you to Lyle Bailey for your super chat. There we go. Thank you, Lyle. Really appreciate your support, mate. He says, "Wonder when the press will put the heat on Russell." Do we think there needs to be some heat on Russell? Will, 8th today, 9.2 behind his teammates. His teammate is 7-time world champion Lewis Hamilton.
They were saying it, I think, weren't they? After the race, that it has been it might have been before the race, actually, after the sprint. But there has been a little bit of a dip in form since these new Merc upgrades have come in, and George doesn't necessarily seem as confident as he did. I don't think it's time to panic yet, because he's still there and thereabouts. There have been a few Q2 eliminations, but sometimes that's honestly where the car is. And again, we are talking about Lewis Hamilton here, who is, one of, let's not get into that argument, but one of the greatest of all time. So, yeah, it's one to keep an eye on, I think, and we'll see how these new Merc upgrades coming in Silverstone affect that, and maybe he'll be able to warm them a little bit more quickly. But he's not a Bottas yet, if that makes sense. He's still, I think someone said, I think there's either 1 point separating them, or they've got the identical amount of points as Hamilton and Russell since they've been teammates. It's some crazy statistic like that, which is really impressive. So it might be a little bit of a downturn in form at the moment, but I'm not concerned at this stage. And it's not quite to the extent of Perez making these obvious mistakes every single qualifying session that we seem to have. So I'm not worried yet, but it's definitely something, as I say, to keep a closer eye on.
Yeah, I just wonder if maybe the bar was set quite high last season, because I know, Lewis Hamilton fans will come and tell me there were reasons behind why George Russell beat Hamilton. Let's not get into that. No, why George Russell beat Hamilton, but to beat Lewis Hamilton, whatever the reasons, in your first season as their younger teammate, it sets the bar quite high, doesn't it? So maybe you could argue that this season is more what I'd have expected last season from George, and maybe last season would have been this season, if that makes any sense. On what sort of, if you said to me, before George got the seat at Mercedes, that he would get the seat at Mercedes, and in his first season he'd lose out to Hamilton, in his second he'd beat him, I believe that more than he beat him and then lost out to him, if that makes sense. So maybe there's a little bit of that there. I don't think Russell's been that bad. I don't think he needs the heat on him. To answer the question a bit more directly, I don't think he needs the heat on him, but that's the sort of thing you need to be looking at. I don't like the whataboutism, because it really annoys me. I hate it. You get it all the time. I think we had it on Saturday when a penalty was given out in qualifying, and the replies to F1 were just, well, what about? Like, oh, shush. It really infuriates me. But there are plenty of other drivers underperforming a lot more than Russell is versus their teammate, and we're not having those conversations. So I don't think the heat needs, like I said, don't need the heat on Russell, but he's quite hard on himself. He's a bit like Norris in that respect, isn't he? He's quite hard on himself if he doesn't get the maximum out of the car. So maybe, I don't know. I'll keep an eye. I'll keep an eye on him at Silverstone, see what happens then, and we'll approach it again next weekend and see what goes on. And Maurice, he literally beat him yesterday. Literally beat Lewis Hamilton yesterday. He didn't. Hamilton beat him today. That's when you've got two exceptional drivers. One's going to beat one day, and another will do it another day. So I'm not sure he's in that position just yet. Cardi says, I'm going to have to tap out. Enjoy all, and thanks for the debrief. Let's hope for more good and safe races. Thank you very much, mate. Have a good evening or day wherever you are, and thank you for your super chat earlier as well. I won't be going too much longer. Will's like, thank God for that. This guy's rabbiting on in my ear. Can't bother with him anymore. Hamilton versus Russell feels like Hamilton. He didn't even deny it. Feels like Hamilton versus Button at McLaren, says Purple Zebra. Yeah. I saw somebody ask a minute ago, do we think, and I can't find your name now and it's annoying me, Rocket says, do you think Red Bull would do team orders at any stage this season? My tongue-in-cheek, being really harsh answer to that, Will, is, well, Perez will need to get somewhere near him first. It's my tongue-in-cheek answer to that one. But I think if they need to, they will. But to be honest, with an 81-point championship lead, if Perez is P1 at Silverstone, for example, and Verstappen's P2, I don't expect them to be pulling a Ferrari in Austria 2002 and swapping them around, because it's not like Verstappen's going to get caught, is it? So they don't need to. They might, but I talk about the 1-2 situation in drivers, but it's not the same as Schumacher, Barrichello, Schumacher, Irvine, is it? It's not quite that level of 1-2 drivers.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, I think my voice is going. But no, I think if they were to enact them at this stage, unless there's like a massive, like Verstappen DNFs out the next 5 races, and all of a sudden Leclerc or Alonso has become a championship contender, which, let's be honest, is not going to happen. Unless we're into that situation, if they did the team order, I'd actually be really annoyed. Kind of similar to how I think everyone was after Ferrari 2002 in Austria. So just let them race. Honestly, give us that little bit of excitement. If, as you say, if Perez can get close to Verstappen, which, admittedly he was doing earlier in the year, but yeah, that's my view. I think it wouldn't do Red Bull a whole lot of good. I think they're already getting a bit of stick for being so dominant, which I don't think is fair. But I think if they did start, then say doing what Mercedes did with Bottas and Hamilton, was it Russia in 2018 or 19?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Then there's just no point at all. So yeah, that's my take.
Lonely Silban says, you probably already talked about Sainz versus Leclerc, but if not, I would really like to hear this take or that take. I'll keep an eye on the FA because I think something's about to come through. So just bear with it. If I suddenly stop, then you'll understand why. But I actually think, and maybe I'm wrong, but I actually think Sainz isn't getting the praise he deserves for this season so far. From me, from everybody really, because everyone raves about Charles Leclerc being this. I mean, I think somebody on Sky F1 the other week said that Charles Leclerc is one of the best drivers out there ever one lap. Well, Sainz's average qualifying this year is 4.3. Leclerc's is 6.1. Sainz's average race finish is 6.2. Leclerc's 6.3, so it's a little bit closer in the races. And the points average, Leclerc is averaging 5.8 points a race, and Sainz is averaging 8 points per race. And if you want to talk teammate battle, that's before this weekend, of course. And teammate battle-wise, including this weekend, it's 5-4 in qualifying overall. And in the races, it's 5-3 to Sainz. So I don't actually think that, you know, and I'm not having to go at Leclerc. A lot of people talk about him being this superstar and he's going to be a future world champion. And I don't feel like Sainz gets the credit he deserves for this season. I'm not going to say Leclerc's terrible and Sainz is amazing. They're both exceptionally good drivers, and both of them have their moments where they're not quite so good. I am stupid, for example. You know, everyone makes mistakes, but I think Sainz had a really good start to the year against a teammate that people, I think, thought was going to walk all over him. And I think that's a little bit... Didn't he beat him last year as well? I know there was sort of reasons.
In Austria?
In the championship.
I don't know whether he beat him last year. I think he might have beat him in 2021, if that's what you mean.
It would have been 2021, because last year Leclerc was fighting for the championship for 3 minutes, wasn't he?
I was going to say, in Austria, actually, he was very good in Austria last year before his Ferrari turned into a barbecue. But I think, Austria is a very good track for Sainz. It's one that I think he's done quite well at in the past. So, it's nice to see him with a little bit more confidence, because I felt he was lacking that a lot at this stage in 2022. And it kind of affects the rest of his season. So it's good to see the two on par. It's probably a bit more of a pain in the backside for Ferrari, but they might have to think even more about strategy, which we know they're not great at doing. So there's that. But it's nice to have a Ferrari lineup that I think can be described as solid. And I'm not sure whether given the state that it has been in recent years, like Vettel and Leclerc. In 2019, it was good, but in 2020, Vettel was going off for whatever reason. And then before that, we had Vettel and Raikkonen, which was never there was that clear 1-2. I think we're getting back to a stage where we could see a more solid and more equal Ferrari driver lineup. And I think at the stage that they are, when they're not fighting for a title, but they're close, from a purely constructor's point of view, I think it's a very good position to be in.
You've made me log into Twitter, people. How dare you? Chris Medland has tweeted, says, and I'll quote him. I'm going to read his tweets. I hate doing this, so I'll say that again. Chris Medland saying this, not me. Says the FIA says there were 1,200 times they had to look at a potential track limit infringements, and quote, prior to the submission of a protest against the results, we'd already begun a full review of the track limits infringements, which is ongoing. The results will be updated once review of those which were not able to be reviewed during the race is complete. And then goes on to say the FIA also recommends gravel traps are installed on the exit of Turn 9 and Turn 10. So there you go. So that's 1,200 times they had to look at potential breaches of track limits. They're recommending gravel traps at Turn 9 and Turn 10 in Austria, and the results will be updated once the review of those which were not able to be reviewed during the race is complete. So the word at the bottom of the screen, as it scrolls across there, is provisional race results. That is very much a provisional race result, because although I haven't got everyone on board, I couldn't tell you, but who knows? It could well be that every single one of them bloody drivers is going to get something. 1,200 track limits infringements. I mean, Christ, that's crazy, Will. But good to see they've recommended something for Austria. Now Austria, I guess, have got to go away. The Red Bull Ring need to go away and say to MotoGP, do you mind if we put some gravel down there, please? No. Basically. So that's the latest from Chris Medland on Twitter. He's unless I've missed something in recent weeks, because I'm not really on Twitter anymore, he's generally a very, very reliable source of news. So, and Andrew Benson of the BBC, he's also tweeted, says, circuit layout and drivers' propensity, couldn't read that then, to breach track limits led to an unprecedented situation which resulted in all potential infringements not being able to be reviewed during the race. He then goes on to repeat what Chris Medland said there about 1200 reports. FIA quotes, will renew our recommendation to circuit to our gravel traps at the exit of turns 9 and 10. While this is not a straightforward solution in relation to other series that race here, i.e. MotoGP, it has proved effective at other corners and circuits with similar issues. So that's the FIA statement apparently coming in there. So acknowledgement that, well, see, the MotoGP argument is fine, Will, but we've got gravel at turn 6.
I guess they're going through there slower. Is that the argument?
Probably.
I don't know. But again, I like the idea before we can have a strip of gravel that's not necessarily right on the line of the circuit, but it's far enough out so that if a Formula One car, which is obviously much wider than the MotoGP bike, were to stray wide, it would get hindered by the gravel if it went over that limit. That to me makes sense. But hey, this is Formula One, so making sense is not something they're always good at. We'll see.
It is lovely to know that we've sat for 2 hours and discussed a race that may not even be the final result, though, isn't it?
Oh, don't. It makes it sound like we've just done all this stuff for nothing.
We're not doing it again. I'm not going live afterwards either. I'm having a couple of days off before Silverstone. So, are you going to Silverstone this year, Will? That's my question to you, mate. Don't say yes. I'm not. Please say no.
I'm not. I'm going to Hungary and Belgium, though. So,
up yours. That's worse. I'd rather go to Silverstone.
Well, I thought that'd be fine, and then I've just looked at how busy I'm going to be with travel. I'm going to be severely jet lagged. I'm doing Goodwood, then Hungary, then Belgium on 3 successive weekends.
Goodness me.
So yeah, my poor upload schedule is finally going to be disrupted, but it is what it is. I mean, to be fair, I'll take that for getting to go to a couple of races this year. So I shouldn't sound like I'm complaining.
Grass, gravel, and snipers, says Valentine. Free says 71 times 20 is 1400. So yeah, basically every driver on every lap that could work out as. I trust your maths, but I'm just going to do it anyway because, yeah, 1420. I'll give you that. I'll let you have it. You're 20 out. Alfa Romeo have sent their press release. Hey, what have they said then? Valtteri Bottas got some damage on the front wing at turn 1 contact, so maybe he was involved in all that with Tsunoda and co. Maybe got mixed up in some chain reaction there. Lost a lot of ground in the first stint. That compromised the rest of the race, as with such a tight field, it was pretty much impossible to recover. Overall, we've been lacking pace this weekend. The circuit certainly hasn't suited as much as in recent races. Nevertheless, we are meant to bring new parts to Silverstone next week. That's handy for the preview. Thank you, Valtteri. And they are meant to make a difference to our performance. We have seen it with our main competitors, how upgrades have been improving their pace, and hopefully that will be our case too. And Joe says, unfortunately, the weekend we haven't been as competitive as we wanted, and the top 10 ended up being out of our reach. Decent start today, and it seemed like I could have moved forward, but then the safety car came in just a couple of laps after I had to pit to remove a tear off from my rear brake duct. So it all went wrong for Alfa Romeo today. Ended up not helping us at all. Overall, pace hasn't been the same we had showed recently. There is surely some work to do looking into the next races, and we're also meant to bring you updates to Silverstone. So there you go. They've told me twice now, so no excuse for that not to be in the preview. Thank you very much. They always think of me, Alfa Romeo. They always think of me. Bless them. Takeaway that's behind a safety car where track limits are irrelevant and you're down to 1200 laps. All right, fair enough. I'll let you off. Yeah, I'm not going to Silverstone this year. I was going to. It was absolutely my intention, and then they started to fanny around with the prices. And I know supply and demand, but I couldn't pay for the tickets when they're at their cheapest, and I'm not going to pay. I'm going to sound like such a really grumpy old git when I say this, but I'm not going to sit somewhere knowing I paid £100 more than the person sat next to me or suspecting it. So I'm just not going to do it.
I'm 100% with you on that. 100% with you.
It would just annoy me. Like, oh, I got my ticket straight away. Oh, screw you. You could buy the beers then. Gravel will only bring debut onto the track, says Space. Yeah, fair enough. We saw it with Albon, didn't we? Australia, gravel across the track. It can happen. I'm not going to read that. No, definitely not. So we'll do this again tomorrow then, Rich. No, not tomorrow, mate. I will do more live streams. It is in the plan. I think next weekend we'll probably do a post-qualifying stream, do like a race look ahead on Saturday evening and just... or late Saturday afternoon, and just have a look ahead to the race, basically. We'll do a race look ahead and look ahead to the race. How's that sound? It does exactly what it says on the tin. Any other questions then? If not, we will round off today. I'm just going to double check the FIA again. Well, I've not seen anything else. It's possible that this is going to take them a while. We may not. They're reviewing 12. They're still reviewing 1,200 potential track limit breaches before confirming the results. So this could be a Wednesday morning Formula E scenario result thing. You never know. With all these time penalties, the race may still be going on. Yeah, they're still out there really racing. That's what's going on. And did you buy into Alpine with Ryan? Says Moray. If someone wants to drop me $1,000, then I'll buy a share or whatever. I don't know what a share costs, but there you go. Interesting news though for Alpine. I know it's a bit, people are memeing it a bit with Ryan Reynolds and all that coming in. Will, we saw it with Wrexham, did a great job there, but it's great for Alpine to have this money, isn't it? And a bright future with these investors. I don't think it necessarily means Renault are considering leaving, as some people have suggested, or dropping the team altogether, but it's nice to get some investment in, and hopefully they'll be able to spend that money really, really nicely and make a big step forward next year and beyond.
Yeah. I mean, Alpine is not a like a lower league football team, so it's going to be a little bit harder to maybe turn around than they have with Wrexham. But yeah, it's nice to see. Nice to see another big celebrity involved in Formula One as well, which is good for the sport's future as well. So yeah, I honestly I have not got much to add on it because I'm not a football fan, so I know very little about what they've done with Wrexham besides the fact that they hired some goalkeeper and he did all right. So yeah, I'm a little bit out of the loop on that, but no, we'll see how it goes. I've not heard anything about Renault dropping the team,
No.
but yeah, I think they're fine.
It might have just been a comment that someone like Ted made on Sky, but I thought I'd seen it somewhere that there was some people saying, "Oh, does this mean Renault are gonna leave F1?" But I don't think that's what it means. It's the difference. It's an investment, isn't it? As someone just said in chat, where are you? I'll give you a shout out. Moray says Mercedes only own like 51% of their team. Ineos and Toto Wolff. Ineos and Sir Jim Radcliffe, who apparently needs to buy everything now. He's trying to buy Manchester United. He owns Nice, and he tried to buy Barcelona. Apparently 50% of them. So if you're listening, Sir Jim, and you've got a £3 billion that you're dying to get rid of, me and Will are here. We'll split it. There you go. We'll go and buy a football team. Seeing as you're so good with football, Will. You go, who's that goalkeeper that Wrexham bought? He did pretty well. We'll sign him. Grimsby Town, we're coming for you. It's always sunshine in Renault. Always sunny in Renault, sorry, says Ken Charlotte. And would be even nice to have an 11th team and no budget caps, says Nick. Do you think Helmut Marko is going to replace Nick mid-season, says Rocket P-Bird? I'll tell you what. So first of all, Waldo says, was the safety car for Tsunoda too quick to come out? I don't think so, because it was for debris, wasn't it, at turn 1? So I think that was good timing for often. We're often telling they're too slow, so I won't go in on them too much. Space says only 51% is a majority. Yes, it is, but it's not 100%. I think some people think 100% Mercedes are 100% owners of the team. They're not, but although Zach says they own 33%, I'm not sure. It's something like that. They don't own the full team. But do you think Helmut Marko is going to replace Nick mid-season? Let's round off on that, because I did do a video on Friday on it. A picture just come from him as well, so it's good timing. I suspect Will's going to say yes.
How did you guess?
I said it on Friday. I'll reiterate the point. There's 4 races. Well, now there's 3 left this month. Then we go into the summer break. Nick needs a good run. He doesn't need to be, I'm not talking scoring points every weekend, because even Tsunoda's not doing that. He's been in and around the points, Suzuki, but he's not been scoring every weekend. But he needs to be as close to his teammate as possible. He needs to be putting in good results, not making mistakes, not running into people, not going off track. He just needs to have 3 good, solid weekends, and maybe he'll see out the season. If he struggles over the next 3 races, who knows? And for those who might say, well, that's not likely. He's not going to get ditched in the summer because Christian Horner says that's not something they're looking at, or Franz Tost isn't sure, or Helmut Marko hasn't said this, or Helmut Marko hasn't said that. I will always take you back if you've been here long enough, you know exactly what I'm going to say. To a few years ago, I put a video out on a Tuesday with Mark, a video about what Marco said about Gasly, saying Gasly is safe for now. And then on Thursday, I had to do a video about how Gasly had just been dropped. So who knows with Red Bull what's going to happen? You can't always take what they say absolutely at face value, as is the case with many F1 teams. But he needs 3 decent weekends, really, doesn't he? Well, he needs to show that he's got some speed, that he's improving. I think is an important word to throw in there. That he's improving, and maybe he's got a chance. But again, I said it on Friday. Usually, when we hear lines like "we're not satisfied," we're looking at that. The pressure's on and things like that. It usually only goes one way with Red Bull and AlphaTauri and co.
Yeah, I'm in complete agreement with you. If I'm honest, this is what I said in the comedy review. Once you're at the point where we're giving you 4 races, you might as well start packing your bags. I think he won't last the summer. I think the question now kind of comes down to who replaces him, and for me, it's between either Liam Lawson or Danny Rick. As crazy as that is to say, I think Lawson deserves the drive. I'm sat here just really wanting Danny Rick in that seat, though. But that's just because I'm a Danny Rick fanboy and always will be. But it wouldn't shock me to see them put Lawson in. Personally, I think it's probably better to give Lawson the drive at the start of the season, just so he has testing and he has all that time to actually get prepared rather than throwing him into a car last minute, because I think that'll probably not do his development a whole lot of good. I think it would be safer for Lawson to put Ricciardo in that car and then, depending on how he does, maybe put Lawson in at the start of 2024. I don't know. It could go either way, personally, but Ricciardo has said he'd be open to an AlphaTauri drive, and I don't know, in a crazy scenario, and it's incredibly unlikely, Perez continues to underperform, start of 2024, chuck Ricciardo in there. It won't happen, as much as I would love it to, but I can dream, right?
Well, to put it in another football analogy for you, I tend to feel like Lawson and rookies...
One that I won't understand.
That you understand, but I think with Lawson, for example, or Iwasa, I think they need a pre-season. I think they need if you're going to put Lawson in, you put him in, like you say, for 24 rather than mid-season. A lot of people completely don't agree with this, and that's fine, that's their right. But I don't see why, if they felt they needed to move De Vries on, I don't see why you wouldn't put Ricciardo in that car, because number one, he's experienced. Whatever you think about what happened last year and the year before, he is experienced. He gets in that car. He's probably going to get up to speed more quickly than a Lawson might, for example. And if there are question marks over Sergio Perez, you then get an assessment of Ricciardo in the second half of the season. So I kind of feel like that's win-win for everyone but poor Nick De Vries. And somebody actually made a comment on Friday, actually, and I think I should probably address this a bit. They said, why is everyone talking about De Vries' future when he's only had 1 season and Yuki Tsunoda gets 3? Yuki Tsunoda is considerably younger than Nick De Vries, and Nick De Vries has considerably more racing experience than Yuki Tsunoda. So that's not to say that De Vries should have got in that car and been straight up to speed, but he should be doing better than he is, even in a terrible car. Somebody else said that, let's all put the pressure on De Vries because he can get the crap car from the back of the grid to the midfield. Well, Yuki Tsunoda was doing it earlier in the season, so, you think De Vries will be better than he is. But, he's a world champion at the end of the day. Not Formula One world champion, but he's a world champion. So you'd expect him to be a little bit better than he has been, is the point, rather than... if he was a complete rookie who'd never raced anywhere other than junior categories before and whatever, then you give him more slack, definitely. But he's not going to get that. He's not, and honestly, maybe you'll all disagree again. He never felt like he was getting more than a season anyway. Honestly, maximum. I think he's filled a gap because Gasly wanted to go to Alpine and they didn't know what else to do, and Nick had a great weekend in Monza.
Fair enough. I think also going back to Tsunoda, he at least had shown flashes of pace, even in that AlphaTauri in the first year. It sounds a bit silly now, but remember back in 2021 Bahrain, and they were saying he's the best rookie since Verstappen or something that had come in. So he'd shown flashes of pace, whereas I think De Vries just hasn't yet. I've not seen that from him. So, yeah, I think the writing's on the wall already.
I'm intrigued by what Red Raven disagrees with. I'm assuming the point about how you'd expect De Vries to be a little bit more up to speed. I don't know if your argument is going to be. I'm not for. I don't want to fall out with you. That's not, like, how dare you disagree with me? That's not what this channel is. You're entitled to disagree, and we'll discuss it. But I'm just wondering if maybe, do you think F1's such a steep curve, such a steep learning curve in F1? When you go from Formula E to Formula One, it's such a big step up that actually he should get as much time as someone like a Tsunoda, a properly young rookie. I'll keep an eye out to see what Red Raven says. I'm just intrigued about what the argument is. I mean, that's assuming you disagree with me. You might disagree with somebody in chat, but yeah. I mean, look, I like him. I think he gets a lot of stick, but maybe he's just got. Maybe he's that driver, Will. I'm not having to go at you, mate, but maybe he's the Latifi of this year or whatever. Maybe he's just the one that's always going to get the stick because there's always one. I'll just wait and see if Red Raven comes back to me. If not, then we'll round off there. But yeah, we'll see what happens. But I think these next 3 races are critical.
Sorry, I've just watched the IndyCar start. My bad. Sorry.
No, you're all right.
Big crash at the start of the IndyCar race.
Well,
but,
I thought you were getting excited because of the breaking news that's just coming in.
Oh, is there breaking news? Go, do tell.
The stewards have received a protest from Aston Martin. Blah 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 blah. Lots of people there, including representatives of Ferrari. Interestingly enough, the stewards determined that as it was lodged on time and complied with the requirements of Chapter 13 of the FIA International Sporting Code, it was an admissible protest. And I think this is effectively what we've already said from Chris Medland. An examination of the list of deleted lap times provided by the stewards by race control revealed that a number of track limit infringements had not previously been referred to the stewards for potential penalty. It was determined that some of these infringements warranted a penalty that was not previously applied when the provisional classification was published. These penalties will be reflected in the final classification. Accordingly, the protest is upheld and the protest fee is returned to the competitor. So Aston Martin have won their protest. We just don't know what's going to happen here. And then competitors are reminded they can appeal this decision. So just to say that again, it was determined that some of these infringements warranted a penalty that was not previously applied when the provisional classification was published. These penalties will be reflected in the final classification, and their process is upheld. So they've won the protest. We just don't know what they've won, which is so beautifully Formula One. Red Raven says, no worries, but yeah, you are correct. Remember, Hartley, Le Mans champion, and still struggled heavily coming to F1. No, that's fair. That's fair. I did think Brendan Hartley when I was saying it, actually, but I think maybe I could reword it better there. Maybe there's an expectation that because he's won titles elsewhere, he would be better than he actually is, and maybe that's why people come down a bit harder on him, I suppose, would be a better way of phrasing that. But no, I'll always say this. The whole point of this channel is I give my opinion. If you disagree, let's have a conversation, but do it respectfully. And I'll explain what I mean by that very quickly. If you start a message with, you don't have to start it with this, but something along the lines of, I disagree and here's why, that's fine. If you start it with, you're a dickhead, I hate you, go and die, here's why I disagree, then you can go and stick it up your backside and you will be blocked. So there's a difference between having a conversation and debate and not, being disgusting about it. And I know Red Raven, we've had disagreements before and we've had conversations before on this channel. So I'll just wait and see this race result comes through then. So does that mean we're awaiting this race classification?
Yeah, the question is, how long is it going to take? Also, on that IndyCar, I think the aero screen might just have saved Felix Rosenqvist there. Bloody hell, just have a look at the... Marcus Ericsson's basically gone right over the top of him. And yeah, it looks like both cars are going to continue, which is typical IndyCar, isn't it? Rosenqvist at least has got going. Sorry, I know it's not Formula One. But,
I was just
for anyone that I know you're watching Indy now, so I wondered if you want the live commentary. But
I was going to be really hilarious. I'd be like, "Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word, where Will is giving you a live watch along of IndyCar, and I'm live watch along in the FIA press release section. We're here all night. Try the chicken."
I think they have just sent Ericsson on his way with broken suspension, which is, oh god, yeah, it's incredibly
classic.
Broken. Oh boy. All right, well, I'll have fun with my video later.
I might let you go then, Will, actually, mate, if you want to go watch that, and I might just sit here and give it another 10 minutes or so, rather than keeping you here for another 3 hours with me.
Okay, yeah, sure, sounds good.
Off, mate. I know you've got work as well tomorrow, so...
Don't remind me.
Oh yeah, sorry, just ruined your day. I've just popped it on now. Yes, looks like Marcus Ericsson has some suspension damage, so I might stay live for a little bit longer. Then I'll let Will get off. So thank you very much, Will. It's been great. Always fun talking to you anyway. But we have good bants, lads. You know, we have a lot of fun on these streams, and it was good to get your view on the race as well, and hopefully, good one in Silverstone as well. Hopefully, the race, not necessarily a stream, but
fingers crossed.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, mate, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
Yeah, no worries. Have a good one, man. See you later.
Just closing Discord. There we go. Yeah, so I'll stay live just for a little bit longer. So if you've got any questions, throw them at me. We can talk about Will now he's gone. So if you want to just let me know any questions. I'll give it maybe 10 minutes or so, maybe 15. 6 hours later, I'm still sat here, and we'll see if they do I would be surprised if the result comes out if they've got 1,200 to go through. But I'm just trying to work out. So I'll tell you what we'll do while we're live. Let's have a look. Oh no, Will's still here. I'll wait then. Wait till he's gone, then we can be rude. So Verstappen 5 points. So look at gaps to other drivers. So let's we don't know who's getting what penalty, if there is going to be another penalty. So Verstappen has 5.1 to Leclerc. So a 5-second penalty, he would be safe. Perez only has 4.1. Sorry, Leclerc has 12 seconds to Perez, so he'd be fine with any kind of penalty. Sainz only has 4.1 to Perez, so if Perez were to get anything, then Sainz would be promoted. He's only got 4.9 to Norris, so he would be promoted as well. Alonso 3.9 behind Norris, so he would be promoted if anything happened there with Norris. Hamilton 8.8 behind, so that wouldn't change. Russell 9.2 behind Hamilton, nothing would change there. 9.2 between Gasly and Russell, nothing there. Stroll 1.3 behind Gasly, that could change if he were to get anything. 10.7 between Stroll and Albon, 12.9 between Ocon and Albon, 9.2 between Sargent and Ocon, 3.2 between Zhou and Sargent, so there could be something there, but other than that, that's looking unlikely to change anything. The only other places are really, really minor places. Piastri might gain a spot, or Magnussen might, but really, in terms of the point scorers, again, to caveat it again, we don't know. We don't know who's getting what, but yeah, most will be safe. You're looking at kind of Sainz, Norris, Alonso area. If anything's going to change, maybe Stroll and Gasly. So if anything comes in, it might not. That's why I'm going to stick around for a few minutes and see what happens. But I suspect this could be a long wait for a lot of people. Yeah, I'm still on. I'm still here, Mario. I'm going to stay for a bit longer. Please do drop a like, by the way. 352 still here, hanging around, keeping me company. Always appreciated. 180 likes. Red Raver says, bit of a sarcastic question. They're the best questions. What's the point of Haas? Every other team is either manufacturer backed or has decent plans, investments for the future. And then there's Haas. And then there's Mod. Anyway, no, yes. Jesus. No, that's what Stuart always used to say on streams, wasn't it? What is the point in Haas? What are they for? What, why? I totally get the point. It's kind of a bit sarcastic, but it's a fair point because they've got close relationships with Ferrari, but they're not. I'm sure they'd love to be winning championships, but it doesn't feel like the same ambition is there versus, I don't know, an Aston Martin. Look at the ambition there, but yeah. I like Haas. I like what they try and do, but I'm not sure what they're trying to do, if that makes sense. The one and only says, just update people on the result in your Silverstone, in your British Grand Prix preview. We may know who finishes where by then. It might be that we have to do another race reaction for Austria next Sunday. Might have to do 2 back-to-back. Mario says, Haas is a racing team. Everyone else is just a financial investment. Zach says, Haas is investment and advertising. 2 completely different views there. Gene Haas can sell the team for a profit in a few years. Well, that partial buyout of Alpine value them at nearly £1 billion. So, or $1 billion probably more likely. That's what they tend to work in F1. So maybe $1 billion. But that's where these teams are. It's not that long ago Williams were going for significantly less than that. So Haas joined when there wasn't much interest in the teams joining. Yeah, very true, Dal. I think they're a bit of a frustrating team for me because when I started this channel, first full season, I started in 2017, but the first full season was 2018, and they sort of really were starting to move forward, Haas. and they kind of fell away. And then they've been doing things like writing seasons off to focus on new regulations, and they've taken steps forward, but then they just really quickly fall away. So is there enough investment going in there? Do they have the right people there? It's probably all of those things and none of those things, but that's what the budget cap has done. Profits and market value, says Nick Surface. Yeah. So CPB1 says it marks 30 years, almost the month since James Hunt died. Do you think he would have been a multiple world champion if he went to McLaren sooner in the 70s? Did he retire too early? I don't know if it's true, but there is a theory that James Hunt kind of wanted the one championship. Once he got it, that was kind of it for him. It's something I always felt with Kimi Räikkönen. Once he got the one, he got the championship, that was it, he was gone. And that's why when he kind of stepped away to go racing elsewhere, I thought that was it for Kimi. But he did come back in the end, didn't he? But what year did James Hunt retire? You're going to tell me before I can Google it, because you're all so bloody good at this. No, that's not who I want. That is not the James Hunt I was looking for. Cool. Some random dude. So his last entry was 1979 Monaco. Is that mid-season then? Yeah, it is. Didn't do many seasons, did he really? 73, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 and part of 9. So maybe a little bit early, but if it is true that he won a world championship once he got that was kind of it. He was not bored of it, but that was all what he wanted to achieve, so kind of moved on. Then I suppose no, but it's not too early to retire. But it does feel quite early after that. That's soon, doesn't it? 6 years or so. Bit more than 6, sure, but yeah. Trying to see. So what age would he have been in 79 then? Oh God, I've got to do maths. This is terrible, Sean. Thanks for this, CPB1. You're making me do maths. So 47. So I mean, what, 30, 32, 33? Somewhere around there. It's not really, you got Fernando Alonso racing until he's 106. So Raikkonen was racing into his thousands. So it does seem odd, doesn't it, I suppose? But yeah, maybe a little bit early. But again, if you're done with it, then no point sticking around. I did. There was an article, I didn't read it, so apologies. But I did read a headline. So never read a headline, never react to that. But said something about how Marco had concerns about Verstappen pulling a Rosberg. I assume it means at the end of his contract rather than this year. But I guess my point is, when people talk about Verstappen retiring at the end of 2028, it does seem really early. But if he's achieved all he wants to achieve in Formula One and he's done and he wants to go racing elsewhere, then you can kind of understand it. Axeli says Hunt never gave hardcore career racer vibes to me, like someone like Barrichello Alonso did. Yeah, I had to emphasize your career there, because I saw hardcore racer. I thought Hunt was very much a hardcore racer, but I know what you mean by career racer. Wasn't maybe looking at doing 200-300 Grand Prix sort of thing, but yeah, yes, a little bit early in terms of age, but if he's done with it, he's done with it. Is my answer to that one. Let's close this poll actually as well. We've had that going all stream, so let's see what you are saying for the rating of Le Race. Where are we? There we go. So 51% of you think it was a good race, 30% think it was a great race, 15% think it was average, and 3% think it was bad. I wonder if they're watching Baku on repeat. It's all about opinions, but I don't think that was a bad race at all. Unless the 3% are only watching for who wins, in which case it would have been a bad race, because you'll have known before the race started who was winning. So I sort of get that one. He was there for a good time, not a long time. Very good point, Purple Zebra. I like that. That's a good line. In fact, I'm screenshotting that. That's a good one. I like it. Red Raven, I too think Verstappen will end his career around 30 and look for some fun racing. WEC is getting more interesting, as is GT racing. Yeah, like I say, if he gets to 2028 and thinks, I've won X number of championships, I've won all these races, he doesn't strike me as somebody who's as fussed about the records as other drivers. I'm sure they matter to him, but he doesn't seem like he's desperate to beat the number of world championships or race wins or whatever. I might be wrong, but that's just how I feel when I look at Max. But maybe he'll sort of think that's it for me now. Let's go do some... I'm watching IndyCar's on in the background now. Let's go do some IndyCar, or let's go racing in the World Endurance, as you say, or that would include something like Le Mans as part of the World Endurance, of course. So you might do. Maybe you go kart racing again, or trolley racing around Tesco on a Saturday afternoon, which would be literal hell. Flashbacks, Vietnam flashbacks there for me. Sorry, you weren't there, man. You weren't there. I wonder if Red Bull sponsors might start getting into, I don't know what I was about, getting in the team's ears about lack of TV time as they are so far in front and not getting shown as much as others, says Blackhawk. So, it used to be a complaint about, I think there were teams that used to complain about that when they were dominating, weren't there? So maybe they might have a word about something, but at the same time, if you've got the Red Bull name and sponsors all over their stuff on the podium, that looks good, doesn't it? If they're not getting a lot of TV time, but when you see Oracle winning in Austria effectively, it's a good thing for your brand. So I think Max will win at least 5 or 6 titles with his current form, says CPB1 every time. CPB1. Let's face it, he's all but a 3-time world champion, isn't he? He's got this one pretty much in the bag. Do you know, this will come back and bite me so hard if Perez wins the title at the end of the year. You said, yeah, I might have said it, but I'm clearly wrong. But yeah, no, I think realistically it's done. 81 points, so that's 3. Nate Saunders, when we had him on the other day, was saying about how teams are already expecting Red Bull to be maybe not as dominant as they are this year, but to be the top team again next year. So you could argue there's 4, which puts him up there with Seb and Alain Prost. A lot of you in chat that I've had on here before, and people, a lot of guests I've had on before, and people like you in chat, a lot of people saying things like, this is it until the new rules in 2026. That gives him 25 as well. So that's 5 titles. So yeah, you might not be far off. And yeah, Nick Surface says Lewis thinks he'll win 7. It's all down to a lot of pressure on Red Bull for 2026. Yes, they've got Ford coming in, but they are building their own power unit with a little bit of input from Ford. So it's a big year for them. That's a big thing. Not many teams that aren't manufacturers tend to do that. Arrows in 98 built their own engine. And that, it wasn't awful, but it didn't go brilliantly. Yes, Mercedes obviously build their engine, and Ferrari build theirs, and Renault do theirs. But like a Williams, you're not likely to see a Williams build a power unit, for example. Oh, has Chris Mork, has Chris Medland tweeted? Sorry, let's see what he's saying. So hearing we should get a race result in the next half hour or so. Not expecting massive changes in terms of points though. So what time are we at? This is going to be a long stream though, isn't it? Do you guys want me to stay live for half an hour, or are you going to take Chris Medland at his word there that there's not really much in terms of changes? So we'll wrap it up there. I'm just thinking that people want to watch this later back as a VOD. It's already 2 hours and 27 minutes. Do we really want to take this to 3 hours? It seems a bit long. And yeah, people want to watch Indy as well. So I'm looking at chat now. Real mixed bag. James just says yes. I know what James wants. James like, whatever you want, sure, just do it. Waffle away, but for your own sanity, we can end this. That sounds very dramatic. A bit more dramatic than it needed to, Red Raven. Yeah, good point, actually. More races, I wouldn't wait. Knowing the FIA, it'll be 2 hours. Yeah. I think we'll probably... So apparently the top 3, according to Scott Mitchell, are clear. Let's see what he's saying then on Twitter. I can't believe you lot made me log back into Twitter. Oh, I thought I was winning. I thought I was winning this. Is he still called Scott Mitchell? He changed his name, didn't he? That's Scott Mills. What the hell is Scott Mills going to tell me? Come on, Sean. I'll just go to the race. It's just easier. We are the champions. No, race. So Scott Mitchell, 2 important updates regarding the Aston Martin protest. First, more penalties are coming as Aston Martin's protest has been upheld. Number of track limit infringements had not previously been referred for potential penalty, and it was determined that some of these infringements did warrant a penalty. Secondly, I understand the top 3 teams are in the clear. Oh no, sorry, the top 3, just top 3 cars, drivers are in the clear. Their positions will not change. So that means Verstappen, Leclerc, yeah, we'll round off then, we'll finish up then. So Verstappen, Leclerc, Perez keeping their positions. Behind them, as I said earlier, the next one is whether Norris maybe drops behind Alonso. or Norris might climb above Sainz. That is the only thing that might change in the points, really. Stroll and Gasly is possible as well, but that's only for minor points. So thank you for pointing me in that direction, everybody, just to double check. So yeah, we'll leave it there then. So top 3, we believe, according to Scott Mitchell, is staying as it is. Chris Medland thinks that we'll get a decision in the next sort of half an hour. So keep an eye on Twitter, see what's going on over there. Sorry, just Purple Zebra again. Another great quote. You can log out anytime you like, but you can never leave when it comes to Twitter. I like it. But yes. So top 3 unchanged. Possible penalties elsewhere by the sounds of it. We'll get that in around 30 minutes. So keep an eye on Twitter. Keep an eye on the FIA feed. See if anything comes in there. But it sounds like really it's going to be minor places that get affected by this. So I don't think anything's going to change massively. Black Hawk says, I just get the feeling the paddock will run out of daily tweets just as the news breaks. That'll be hilarious. That'll be absolutely... Yeah. I say if they completely rewrite the result and, I don't know, Alonso wins from Gasly and Sargent, then I will be going live to come to you all and go, what the mother clucking hell has happened here? But we will round it off there. So if you are watching later when this goes up as a VOD, then apologies that we are at 2.5 hours, but a bit of waffle at the end there. Just to make sure, I wanted to make sure nothing happened, because last time I ended a stream really early when we were waiting for something, about half an hour later I was live again, so it was worth waiting. But there we go. So just to confirm that again for anybody who might be popping back in to see what's going on, Chris Medland says there should be results in the next 30 minutes, and that's... Oh, hang on. Is that new? No, it isn't. Sorry, motorsport.com just miles behind everybody else in their tweets. I thought they put something out there. There we go. Never mind. Doesn't matter. So yes, I'll start again on what I was saying. Chris Medland thinks there'll be a decision from what he's hearing in the next half an hour, but there are not expected to be massive changes. And Scott Mitchell from the race says the top 3 are locked in as far as he knows. So we're not expecting any big changes to the results. So we might see a couple of minor changes, but that's that. I'm gonna. Yes, Johnson, you know what's going on here, but I am going to leave it there. So that's the update. That's what we know. If, again, suddenly we have a massive surprise with an AlphaTauri 1-2, then I will come back later, but it's unlikely. So I'll trust the journos on this one for a change. I'm keeping on IndyCar as well. Sorry. I should be not very professional, is it? I should be streaming. But anyway, yes, let's leave it there. I want to go to the end screen. That's it. We are there now. It is over. Thank you very much for sticking around. We are 12 likes away from 200. If we could get there before I go, that would be absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much for your support tonight. Thank you for your super chats as well. Did I get everybody's super chats in tonight? Thank you to Lyle, to Mike, to AC, for Nick, to Cardi, and to Valentine as well for your super chats. Really appreciating the support, especially at the moment. Things are very tight here and very tough. So hoping that the next few weeks will improve things a little bit. So really appreciate that support. Thank you to my patrons as well. You can support the channel over on Patreon. And if you don't want to do that, you can also support the channel by going and popping on the last couple of videos for full length in the background quietly. You don't have to watch them. Just put them on quietly in the background. Leave me on repeat. It's fine. I'm joking. But yes, thank you very much for your support there. I will be back. If not before, we could have some news on Lewis Hamilton's contract this week. We don't know. There was some talk it might be before Silverstone. We'll see what happens there. We might have a completely different race order, so maybe. We'll see. But otherwise, I will be back on Thursday with the British Grand Prix preview. I think the news roundups are coming back next week as well, so that will be out on Friday if I stick to that. Don't hold me to it. Saturday after qualifying, we're going to go live with a race look ahead. That'll be a solo one, and then Silverstone race reaction on Sunday, which could be solo as well because it tends to be difficult to get guests on for the British Grand Prix because everyone's at Silverstone. So we'll see how we go. I'm also going to reach out to some journalists this week to see if we can get somebody on for a week for the Wednesday after Silverstone to do a bit more insight from the paddock. We'll see how we go. But thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.